Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
The following podcast is brought to you exclusively by the Rad Rob Radio Network.
This is PBA champion Kyle Troop.
Hey y'all, Jacob Bishop here.
Jeff Riggles here from 11thframe.com.
Hey guys, Chuck Ritchie here, formerly of Bowl TV.
Hey guys, this is Ryan Schaefer of track staff at Valley Bowling Center in Waverly, New York.
And you're listening to Straight Up 5 with Johnny Petraglia Jr.
Yo, the boys from Straight Up 5, Rad Rob, Dr Ocho, and of course JP Jr.
Pick it out. Fear the fro, baby.
Welcome to Straight Up 5 with Johnny Petraglia Jr. A hard-hitting, in-depth, cutting-edge look into the world of bowling. This podcast will not only cover all things bowling, but will also give you a raw look into real-life issues. You'll get unfettered access into the mind of one of the most gifted bowlers of this or any other generation.
Right, and they claim it. Somebody does it!
So without further ado, let's introduce you to the hosts of the show. Rad Rob, Rob Francois. Rad Rob, Rob Francois. Dr. Ocho. Dr. Ocho. And the incomparable Johnny Petraglia Jr. Johnny Petraglia Jr.
Hey guys, welcome to Straight Up 5 with Johnny Petraglia Jr. I am your host, Rad Rob, Rob Francois. This is episode number 101, and to say that we have a special guest would be understating it. I mean, he's average. I mean, he's all right, I guess. I don't want to sell it too much. I'm just kidding. This is going to be a great show. Before we bring in a very special guest, I must bring in my two co-hosts. First, he is the man with the golden mask. He is the resident doctor of Straight Up 5, the resident house hack, Dr. Ocho. Good evening, Och. Quite the day. Apparently, I didn't get the memo. We did not coordinate our apparel tonight.
The art department should have contacted you a week ago because we figured you had to get fitted for something new. But no, you can still see, even through the suit, Peakzilla, James Vander Peak, Twin Peaks are still alive and well. Let's start the show, Rob.
This is literally the first time I've seen you in sleeves. JP Jr. What's going on, JP?
Pleasure to be here, as always, sir.
You guys look fantastic. Hello. Hey, Nicole's here. Happy birthday, Nicole.
I mean, gotta be honest, this is a little bit of a special occasion. And
we're kind of a big deal.
All my idea. So,
of course. No, I'm just
dapper for today's.
I'm just here pushing buttons and looking like a jackass. So,
software drop.
No, you look perfect, and it's better off that all three of us don't look as good as Ocho. So
that's fair. That's fair. It's still weird seeing him in sleeves. I don't get it. I didn't know he had sleeves. I'm waiting for them to fall off when he posed. So anyway,
they might.
All right, let's not ado anymore because I do way too much. Well, I mean,
please stop doing.
I don't do much, but when I do ado, okay. We are going to play a very special highlight package, as we always do for all of our guests. So here is the career of Belmo, Jason Belmonte. We all know about Jason Belmonte's accomplishments.
Look at what's happened to me. I can't believe it myself. Suddenly I'm up on top of the world.
here's some things you may not know. I didn't know who he was 8 years ago, but I saw him on Dude Perfect. Like, who is this guy throwing a bowling ball two-handed? That's weird.
What's up, guys? We're Dude Perfect. I'm Jason Belmonte from Australia, the #1 bowler in the world. Welcome to Bowling Trick Shot.
Little did I know at the time that later on, down the road, I would get the ball against him and knock him out of the Masters.
Goes inside. It really wasn't that bad of a shot, just missed by a little, but sometimes that's all it takes.
I'll take it.
One more bowling action coming up next.
He's even the voice of Bandit Gila from Bluey.
Oh, no!
Dance mode!
Are you okay? I'm fine. Just ignore this. Now, what about my library card?
Since then, we've become really good friends. We went on vacations together. Johnny Jr. was there with him when he won his ESPY. He and Dr. Ocho shared a moment. But seriously, we can't thank him enough for coming on our show. He is the greatest of all time. Nobody else has influenced an entire generation of bowlers to bowl two-handed, which includes some of the best in the world today. Please welcome our very special guest, Jason Belmonte. Let's do it. Let's bring in the GOAT, Belmo, Jason Belmonte. G'day, mate.
Gentlemen, how are you, boys and girls watching? First off, thank you. That was a remarkable introductionary. Is that a word? Introductional.
It is now.
Didn't do it justice though.
Video. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that, and I'm actually surprised that you didn't send me the photo of our vacation together. I asked you for that photo as soon as we took it, and you never sent it to me. So I'm glad to see that it still exists.
He sold it to People Magazine for like $500. The cheap guy.
Actually, no, it's a couple of buckets of Popeyes, but I mean, it's I didn't even get that much out of it. But now
they know your blood type.
It was fun putting that together. I made a joke a few months ago, Jason, that if we ever had you on your show, which I didn't ever expect to have you on. With the highlight packages they play for all of our guests, I said, if I bring Belmo on, it's going to be like an hour-long highlight package because he has won so much. You have no idea how hard it was to cram that into 4 minutes, but I had fun. I had fun doing it.
Well, thank you very much. That was very, very awesome of you. So, boys, how are you? Well dressed to at least half of us. I feel very underdressed tonight. I was not expecting this, but I like it. I almost feel like this should be your little thing. This is.
Hey, look, we dress accordingly. We had to step up our game tonight to the best that we could, at least.
No offense to the other guests, by the way.
No offense to the other guests, but Rob puts together the highlight package, gets the connect. We at least have to, be handsome for you.
I appreciate it.
To at least some extent, the way straight up.
And as you can see, Belmo, during the highlight package, Ocho lost his sleeves. It's pretty remarkable.
I know. It's a cool little line.
They actually just left. They left. They said, I'm out. Things were too tight, so things happened.
I'm just surprised that you would ever share the screen with someone because I feel like there's just, like, JP's been pushed so far to the side because of the guns you've got there. I feel like it should be in your contract, JP, that you should have your own screen so you have a bit of room. And it's not your fault.
Contract is 2/3, 1/3. It's okay.
Ironically, we're actually in the midst of still writing that up.
Well, I'm looking forward to tonight, fellas.
It's
and like
in the HR department.
In the green room. Happy to answer anything you want.
And Jason, obviously, before we get started, just a real quick thank you from the entire team here at Straight Up 5, and obviously for all of our guests who are here. It's an absolute honor and pleasure. You don't need an introduction, but it's an absolute pleasure to have you here with us tonight. So I just want to get that out of the way. First and foremost, I mean, you and I have shared many a good conversation over the years, and it's really just an honor to me, and it's a testament to the kind of person you are through all of your success. So thank you very much for being here.
No, very kind of you, JP. No worries at all. And like I said to you boys in the green room, ask me whatever you want, and I'll give you an honest answer, as I always do. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm a little worried, a little scared. Don't know what you're going to ask, but
we asked really
part of the fun.
We asked hard-hitting questions on here. We asked Marshall Kent what he does for his daily routine or what he has for breakfast. So we can start off with that. Do you have a ritual?
Whoa! I didn't realize we're getting that personal.
No, we do. No, we do.
Let's take it down a notch. All right, geez, slow down.
Do you have a ritual?
No, I'm not superstitious. No rituals. I don't have to wear the same underwear every day in a tournament. I don't have to eat the same thing. I don't believe in any of that stuff.
I have a skill. I'll go off of that. Obviously, this is spawning from Dad, and I've always been very curious. Aside from everything we know you can do with a bowling ball, what you've done with a bowling ball, what you'll continue to do for the bowling community moving forward, do you have a pre-shot routine dependent on certain phases in the tournament? Like, in other words, if you're in a pressure situation where you need 260 to either make match play or a TV show, or you have a long format tournament compared to a short format, do you find your brain is always kind of the same steady eddy, or do you find it fluctuating? Do you have to monitor, the highs and lows that you experienced? Or in other words, what happens? We want to know what happens in your brain. We see what happens physically. We see you're the best thing the sport's ever seen. What goes on behind the curtain? What's happening in your head prior to throw? I can visibly see it because I'm an emotional person as well, and I can read a lot. I can tell by your looks on television when you're extremely relaxed, when you're always there to work, but I can really, really tell when you're there to really, really kick the living shit out of everybody, with all due respect. I just kind of want to know what happens in the brain throughout the tournament.
Yeah, man, it's a good question. I think I try to convince myself that whether it's the first shot of the tournament or the last shot of the tournament, you've got to be able to respect each single shot as the most important shot of the tournament. And ultimately, if you can do that, you're going to bowl really well. And so that's what I think about as soon as I walk in, is that there is no more important frame than the one that I'm about to throw. The problem that happens is, especially in the major championships, these formats can be quite long. The days can be long. You start to get tired. You start to get frustrated. And so you can definitely kind of fall in and out of that psyche. And so you have to convince yourself and remind yourself throughout the days that, hey, you're all over the place. Your mind is wandering. You're worried about something. You're thinking about something else, and so you have to kind of snap your fingers and tick back over. I think when it comes to TV time, I think it's really difficult for me to fall out of that quote unquote zone, because it is so obvious where you are. You've got the cameras, you've got the lights, you've got the crowd. And so it's really, when I say easy for me, to be super aware of my concentration and what I'm thinking about. And you call it a pre-shot routine. And I suppose to some degree, that pre-shot routine starts from the time I sit down in a seat to the time I let go of the ball. That's pretty much the whole process for me. I have tried many a time to kind of switch off when I'm not bowling and switch back on, but I don't know. I think for me, it's just easier that once I find it and just stay there. I see a lot of players, they'll throw the shot, they'll be in their little zone, and then they'll go wander around and they'll talk to their ball rep about, I don't know, the game that's on tonight, or I don't know, they just talk about general things with people. And then when they come back to the approach, they kind of try to get themselves back into it. I feel like when I do that stop, start, I tend to get a little bit more wayward. So I'm not necessarily the most talkative guy on tour when I bowl, and it's not because I'm not willing to have a chat with them. I mean, I'll talk to somebody if I do, but I try to limit the amount, just because once I sit down, I'm still thinking about what I'm about to do next and kind of get into it. So when you see me in those, as you say, quote unquote, kick everyone asses mode, I think that's just when I'm hyper focused on my process, and TV is where it's a lot easier to do that.
So you take your TV routine and basically just put it towards your tournament routine, even though, like you said, 48 game block or something like that, how to keep that mental focus. I don't think that's something many people can do, let alone even the professionals. I mean, that takes a special person just to keep that kind of focus for every shot. You know, we see why it's on TV, but there, man, that's got to be a special thing in your brain to keep that kind of intensity and focus there.
Well, ironically, Jason, real quick, sorry to cut you off. What you just said about, you try and be talkative while you bowl to some extent, but for the most part, you're heavily involved in what you're doing. Dad used to tell me stories about Don Carter, one of the greatest of all time. Don Carter, the second practice would be over, he would shake everybody's hand on his pair and say, "Good luck, guys. I'll talk to you at the end of the block." And then every shot Don Carter would throw for the duration of the tournament, he would sit in the same chair, cross his right leg over his left, and flip his towel over his right shoulder. And he wouldn't talk to anybody throughout the entire tournament. We see that in greatness. We always knew that Earl Anthony was always more irritated when he lost as opposed to happy when he won. And it seems to be like that kind of a trend. Somebody of your greatness and that caliber, you guys are just built. It's not necessarily that you're built differently, but you've maximized on that part of the brain, and it's very, very cool to watch. Sorry to cut you off there.
No, man, I appreciate that, and I didn't know that about Don Carter. I don't think I'm that forward to the guys on my pair. I don't necessarily tell them, don't talk to me, but most of the guys have been around me enough to know, I'm not really the guy to go and tell a joke to and tell a story about some guy on some other pair 5 lanes away about something. I mean, if I happen to hear it and I'm a part of the conversation, I try to be a part of it, but it's very, very quick for me. And I think it's kind of funny that when you said about Don Carter sitting in the same seat, I do the same thing. I find a seat on the pair that I kind of dibs as mine, and it's kind of funny because I never ever ask anyone to move out of my chair. If one of the guys is sitting in that chair that I've just kind of been sitting in throughout the day, I never tell them to move because, well, that's their routine. Who am I to tell someone else to ruin their routine to benefit mine? If the seat becomes available, I'll sit
down. Ever the gentleman too. Jesus.
But I will say it's kind of funny when you do come off the approach and someone's sitting on your seat, and it'd be very, very few times where someone doesn't recognize that and they continue to sit there. They usually always go, "Oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to sit in your chair." And I always go, "Dude, you pay the same entry as me. I mean, this is your chair as well."
You don't walk up and go, "Really? Really? You saw me here for 2 5 frames? Are you kidding me?"
No, but I kind of must, there is a moment there where I go, that's really cool that someone else recognizes that. It's for me, it's a very high level of sign of respect for me. And, when you think about my career as a rookie, no one would have done that for me as a rookie. No one would have given a shit about what I wanted and where I wanted to sit as a rookie. And then you go through your career and you look back and, these kids are like, "Oh, sorry, Belmo, do you want your seat back?" And sometimes I go, "No, I'm good, man. I got to go get a drink or something." But it's a kind of surreal moment when that happens.
Yeah, because now you're like, "Ha, yeah, you know who I am, goddammit. That's good."
I've won more majors than you've bowled tournaments, kid.
Yes. I mean, legit, the first stat that I see, my dad's a Hall of Famer, one of the best known bowlers in the world. My dad's got 14 PBA titles. The first highlight I see is 15
majors. I know.
Get the.
And then your dad was one of the first Triple Crown guys too.
Yes. It's and we can't wait to see what comes next.
He 5-top crowned him or something.
Rob, what do you got? I'm sorry, I'm fanboying here.
No, it's your show, Johnny. Is it surreal to you, Belmo, when you kind of sit back and think of all you've done already? I mean, you're 40 years old? I mean, you still have a lot of time left. Obviously, you're still in the peak of your prime. Do you ever just kind of think, wow, how the hell did I accomplish all of this?
I told you I'd answer this honestly, and so I will. And I'll do this with the knowledge of knowing that there is going to be people listening to this that won't like this answer for whatever reason. But I'm a little disappointed in some of the things that as a younger kid on tour in particular, that my immaturity cost me. And there are things that I think, wow, what could I have done back then to improve on what I already have?
Right.
And so I think the other side of that coin is possibly the lessons that I learned as a kid that cost me from winning certain major championships earlier in my career potentially have helped me later on. But there's always that little question in the back of your mind, like, man, if you weren't such an idiot back then, or you had have just taken your time, or you had have just been a little more focused, what could have happened? But time is all relative, and unlike Johnny Petraglia and unlike Parker Bone and Norm Duke and Pete Weber and Walter Ray, I don't want to be in America bowling as much as I am when I'm in my later years of my professional career. So, I have a lot of things that I want to accomplish, but I don't see the timeline being as long as Walter's or Earl's or Dick Weber's or any of the greats from the past. I feel like my window of opportunity is a little smaller purely because I have such a strong desire to want to be around my kids a bit more and be home in my country. So with all that said, am I thrilled at what I have? I'm going to let myself truly appreciate the career that I've been able to build when I roll my last ball down. I feel like as soon as you start saying things like, oh, I'm super happy and I'm content with where I am, and it's amazing what I've accomplished, a part of me feels like I'll take the foot off the accelerator just a little bit. And if you know the guys on tour like I do, you take it off for a little bit, you get left behind.
They'll throttle you. They will throttle you.
Yes.
And so my philosophy is so much more around, I got so much to do with such little time. Let's take every opportunity, by the scruff of the neck, and just when it's done, I'll look back at the video you played and maybe a few more highlights thereafter and just remember it all and be like, wow, that was pretty cool. But till then, I gotta look at the things I want to take off the list.
So that's a lot of mental fuckery that you put on yourself. Honestly, I mean, is that putting too much?
You've been doing for this long, though. I mean, obviously it works. I mean, look at the guy.
But if you see that you have a window that may be closing each year, do you think that's putting a little bit too much pressure and stress on yourself, or do you think you're even keel enough? Like you said, you've learned lessons that you can handle it better now.
Yeah, mate. I mean, if it's one of those things where I know that bowling's not a mainstream sport, and so the camera lens, whilst it's been focused on me a lot through my career, there's so much of it that you haven't seen, the behind the scenes, the qualifying rounds. And I can tell you from the first time I rolled the ball onto the Pro Tour, the expectation, the hate, the jealousy, the lies, the everything have been there from day one. And that puts a lot of pressure on you too, because now if you don't perform and you don't live up to the expectation, then you come falling down a lot harder than most when people are looking at you a little more. And so I feel like anytime I've ever been put into a position where someone considers me to have an expectation to fall, I tend to want to rise up a little more. And it's not because I want to directly say to that one individual or a group of individuals, like, F you, I'm doing this. It just, I don't know, there's something that happens to me. The moment someone comments on a picture of mine and says, you're trash, like it just, I see it, I notice it, and it's like, I'm going to use it like somehow.
You maintain the conscious confidence, and then when somebody tries to shit on it, you make them remember who you are.
Oh, you're hilarious. Yeah, you're absolutely.
It's a lot of I told you so in some of those things.
And with you, it's.
We love it.
I don't want to say it's subconscious. At least, again, this is one man's opinion, outsider perspective. It's what separates you. Earlier, when you were talking earlier, you talked about the same problems that everybody at every single level goes through. You talk about the ups and downs. You talk about, oh, man, if I hadn't have done this in my younger years, what would have happened? I do that too, Jason. But I'm 39. I've never made a TV show. You not only do it, but you've figured out a way to do it and execute it better than anybody else on the planet. I know I've used this word a couple times on the show already, but to me, remember, this is surreal to me because we're talking to Michael Jordan. We're having a sit-down conversation here with Jack Nicklaus or Tiger Woods. Like, this is our sports.
First off, Johnny, we can talk anytime that you want to talk, all right? Like whenever I'm in Vegas in particular, you always in the past have always come in and said hi. So don't ever feel like, okay, that we can't have a conversation off air anytime that you want. I mean, I've loved you and respected you and your family for a very long time. So that's the first thing. The second thing is very kind of you to say those things. But I think the third thing is that's also part of it. What you're saying is, in my experience, when I talk to past champions or when I talk to up-and-coming champions, you can almost see it in their eyes, but you hear it immediately. You know the kind of player you're talking to based on the way that they talk about how they want to learn from failures in the past. The ones that are a little bit more like, ho-hum, you you can't win them all. You either win or you learn, right? Like that mentality, I get it, and some people resonate it within themselves. To me, that was never really an acceptable response. It was never like ho-hum. It was like, right, what the fuck happened? This is unacceptable. Why did you do this?
Of course.
Why did this happen? And you're going to work until it doesn't happen anymore. And every day I'm learning something new about myself and about my game that doesn't work, or it stopped working, or it's evolved and it's changed over time naturally, and it's not producing results. And so you're constantly at battle with yourself. But again, when I talk to those before me, in not just bowling, in other sports too, because I've been very fortunate to meet some very, very amazing individuals in the world, it's a very similar psyche. It's just like, no, I can't handle this. I got to figure it out. I got to figure it out.
That's the mindset that actually separates the top guys from the mediocre ones that we don't hear of. That are they're great bowlers. They're on tour. They make cuts, but we don't see them on the television too often. And the cream rises to the top, also, as we say. And that's like, it seems like every one of those guys, like you said, you take your foot off the throttle a teensy bit, and almost in like chimp society, they'll feel it, they'll know it, and they'll be able to pounce. And then you're going to be left behind, like you said. So that's why you are doing what you're doing. And there's a few guys that are chasing you awfully well too. But it's wild how that happens. How you guys have to have that special mindset.
You have that mentality. There's a famous Bruce Lee quote where he says, "Be like water." And I always admired Bruce Lee growing up, especially because of Dad and Dad's karate background. But I don't have the entire quote in front of me, but the whole premise of "be like water" means every time water ripples, it runs into something impeding its journey this way. All it does is separate and travel in a different direction. It continues with the flow of whatever the universe sticks in front of it at any time. And it seems like, aside from the physical talent, aside from the commitment, aside from the preparation, aside from the complete giving your all to the sport that's produced a living for you and your family, you allow yourself to be like water. Does that kind of make sense?
And let me put this into a really nice Johnny Petraglia Jr. bow tie here, and we can move on. I think the pressure question of, do you think that you're adding more pressure to yourself in giving myself a time frame? I think when you look at everything that you've just said there, JP, about, and it's not just myself, believe me, like every player on tour, every single player that's ever played on tour has to leave their home to chase their dream. And whilst I may be leaving from a further distance, we are all away from our family. We are all away from our friends, and it can be an incredibly difficult journey. However, the pressure of going there and not succeeding far weighs the pressures of when you're pushing yourself to do well. As soon as you succumb to the fear of this may not go very well, then I feel like you're already going to have a really hard time.
You've lost already, yeah. Holy jeez.
Now, the big trick is when it hasn't gone well for a really long time, then you still have to walk into the building thinking, this is exactly where I want to be. This is going to be a great week. I'm going to win this tournament. And that, to me, is that look in the eye. That's the one. And it doesn't matter if they're a rookie or a Hall of Famer. You see that look 5 weeks in a row haven't made a cut. They will walk in the 6th week, and you can see it, and you know, like, it's gonna come because I can feel it. They feel it, they know it, and they see it. The ones that walk in there, heads down, they go into the paddock and they're already complaining about their lane draw. They're already complaining about what oils we're using. They're already complaining about something that's changed from the day before. You already know.
They beat themselves already, basically.
You don't have to worry about them. You don't have to. And look, I get it. Like, I've been out there, so I understand the guys have pressures and responsibilities, and it's frustrating and it's difficult. The point that I'm trying to make is the ones that are able to break through that fear and turn it into something where it's continually motivational. Those are the ones that do have success, not just short term, but long term. So that's the nice little bow about putting pressure on yourself. You should put pressure on yourself. Like, you should want to feel it, and you should want to accept it, and you should push through it.
We have a lot of
that's the kind of shit we want to know.
So we've talked. I'm the smart one of the group, obviously, with my clearly. We've talked about bowling injuries. People that have had to retire early, but you're the first guy to throw it two-handed. I'm not looking for your medical history by any means, but like the way I always looked at it mechanically is like you're a lot more sound than the one-handed bowlers because you're a lot more symmetrical. You're using bigger muscles, and the strain and the stress seems to be a lot less on I'm sure your wrist probably kills. I don't doubt that. I'm sure your elbow don't feel great, but compared to holding one rock, if you held 2 bowling balls, you're symmetrical. You'd probably go a long time. Just illegal. You holding 2 bowling balls, we've always said we don't even know what the injuries are because they're very predictable with the one-handers. So you at age 40, in the prime of your career, I don't remember you missing too many tournaments either besides COVID. So I feel like this is also your time to know that your body is going to hold up through this next whatever you have, this next window that you're saying. And that's we're going to figure that out through you. Technically, the whole bowling community, basically.
Yeah, it's one of the concerns that the fans have always, and the critics, I should say more specifically, have always questioned with regards to the two-handed bowling in my career. Even as a kid, in my early teens, there would be coaches or bowlers that'll be like, hey, you probably should start doing that. You won't be able to bowl when you're 30. Your back's going to be all jacked up and you're going to have all these injuries. And then, I turned 30 and nothing. And then everyone's like, oh, wait till
you can throw a bowling ball. Like, that's crazy. So forget that talk.
Right. But then, as my career has gone on, everybody is expecting that my body is going to break down in a way that will deter. And this is, again, from a criticism point of view, that it is like a notion of an acceptable answer to say to a kid, don't bowl two-handed because look at Belmo now. He can't bowl anymore. It's hurting him. Now, I've never been injured. You said wrist is sore, elbow is sore. I don't feel any pain. I've never woken up sore. I can bowl a whole tournament, major championship. And then if you look at my career, I think that's also one of the reasons why I have been really successful is the longevity, not just from a year-to-year basis, but from a week-to-week basis. When, over the course of a season, a lot of guys do get sore this, sore that. Hands get busted open. And my career has been solid week to week, very consistent. And I have these spikes of successes. And I do think that that's been a huge contributing factor to my success. Now, do I think that I'm immune to injury? Of course not. I know at some point my repetitious motion, the travel that I do, the obligations that I have to adhere to, and the constant pulling this way, pulling that way, then go bowl 48 games in a major championship, and then go do all these things after that. Like, my rest time is decreasing. So I know at some point my body's going to be like, yo, you got to slow down a little bit. Fortunately, that hasn't happened yet. But I do find it kind of amusing when the question comes up with two-handed bowling in general. It's like, well, you're going to hurt yourself. And then I always think to myself, but if you try to teach somebody to bowl like Robert Smith, who you had on last week, right? Like Robert, if you were lucky and you had the gift to bowl like Robert, you would take it immediately. Like one of the game's greatest power players. unfortunately, that part of his game has caused a lot of injury. And, now he's in his senior years. I think we missed a lot of what Robert was capable of, not because of talent and opportunity, but it came down to the way that he threw the ball. It hurt him. And I think that's a part of the game you have to accept. One-handed, two-handed, if you're going to do this at a high level as much as we do it, I don't know. I don't think you can really tell anybody you should stop doing that because you're going to get hurt. I think the athlete has to kind of be prepared with, well, this is how I do it. And if I'm going to have success with it, there is a risk that I'm going to get hurt. So I better win a lot, which Robert did in his defense. He won major championships and he won a lot. Maybe he didn't know he was going to get hurt. Maybe he did, but he was fortunate enough to strike.
Well, like we said, you're basically it's mechanically sound because again, bigger muscles are doing most of 90%.
But it hasn't always been like that, Dr. Ocho. I feel very weird saying that with an Australian accent. I don't know. I feel like I got to change the accent. Dr. Ocho doesn't sound.
It's totally fine. Believe me, you're welcome to say my name.
So when I was younger, my game was a lot more harsh, and it was never built out of the mechanics of it, wondering if I was going to get hurt or not. I never changed anything out of fear of injury. It was out of fear of poor performance. And so when I was young, the game was a lot more harsher. I used to stand all the way back at the approach. I used to run really fast to the foul line.
So you're probably planting and hopping around and what?
And I would break pins, like not figuratively, like literally. I would throw the ball as hard as I could, and there was a lot of comparison between Oscar and I. And Oscar, you all know, throws the ball incredibly. That is how hard I used to throw it. Everywhere I went, every shot I threw was, I'm going to rip it as hard as I can, and I'm going to strike 8 times a game, and I'm going to break a pin somewhere, and I'm going to think it's cool. Well, I came to realize when you strike 8 times a game and you open 2 other times, and then you don't strike 8 times the next game because you hit a bad pair or you get a couple of bad breaks and you're missing spares, and now your bad shots are 5 counts. Well, I realized it doesn't really matter how many pins you break. Like, what really matters is if the ball can split the 8-9. So the refinement of my game came down to, I got to stop giving away frames. And as you go through your career, like when I was a junior bowler in Australia, my talent separated me far enough where I could afford to throw 2 or 3 bad shots a game or miss a bunch of spares because I would win by hundreds and hundreds and sometimes like over 1,000. And it would just be like, I don't need to worry about the 10 pin. I can afford to miss every 10 pin I leave because I'm just going to strike more than everybody else.
Right.
It's fine. Then you go to the next level and that gap is closed a little bit. And now you're not winning by hundreds, but you're winning with like a strike in the 10th. And you're like, oh, that was a little closer than usual. And then you go to the next level and it's like you're not in the cut anymore.
Yeah, like, wait, I just lost? I don't lose. What is this all about?
100%. So when you get to the Pro Tour, as talented as I thought I may have been, I wasn't well-rounded enough that I could afford to throw that 2 bad shots a game and then miss a spare in the next. I couldn't afford to do that. The Chris Barneses and Tommy Joneses they would laugh at you when they played at you because it was almost like this understanding, just get close in the first 6 frames and he'll throw 2 bad ones and then I'll just jump all over it and win. And so, you bowl a couple of seasons like that and you start to say to yourself, this is unacceptable. And so that's where the refinement really came down to. It was like, right, 600 RPM is cool, it's great, it looks awesome, but I would rather throw the ball at 520. I'm going to strike a bunch, but I'm also going to hit what I'm looking at every frame. And so
you saved yourself injuries most likely because again, that refinement is literally what made your mechanics more sound. And I'm only speaking recently because we've discussed it and we just don't know. We don't know because you and Oscar are the first guys really. So we'll know in 20 years or 30 years, but as of now at 40 and you're still rocking and rolling like that, that's freaking badass. And good on you, man, because everything is in perfect position, clearly, that there's no stresses. And that's all my thing. I'm the smart guy, so I'll sit this one out.
Jason, I have one thing to say, and then I want to pass it to Rob because I know he's got a lot of content. First, I want to say to everybody in the chat, A, thanks for being here, and B, we are really, really sorry that we're not fielding any questions at this point, but we are strict to 1 hour tonight, so we're kind of just flowing here. So I'm respectfully, on our behalf, saying I'm sorry we can't get to everything. But having said that, the last thing I want to say has to do with the question that was presented and has to do with a very dear friend of mine. And Jason, I think you'll appreciate this because it's kind of ties a couple things together again from this end. Earlier, Del Picard wrote, if you can find it, Rad Rob, he wrote something about, do you feel that the way that you bowl has spawned a new generation? It was a little ways back, but I was thinking about it because 20 years ago, my dad, after you and my dad bowled that doubles event at the Orleans in Vegas, which he was super duper honored to bowl with you, and he was the one that told me you would be the best in the world. Even then, you could quote me on that, but. Every Tuesday night, now that I'm in Jersey for a little while, I bowl league back at good old Carolier Lanes, where obviously you are a Masters champion, one of your 15 majors. And I have a very dear friend, JD Santalucia, and a outstanding bowler in his own right. But typically after league on Tuesday nights, I bowl a few games with his son, Joseph. And I don't have any children, and I've kind of taken Joseph under my wing. I try and be like a second father next to JD to him. And last night after league, after we got done bowling and he knew you were going to be on today, he wanted me to ask if you remember when you won your first Masters title at Carolier, the young man that handed you like a full note saying, I really, really hope you win the major this week. But anyway, that was the young man that I was bowling with last night. And again, Joseph is his name. And to me, from the outsider's perspective, though you not only changed the game of bowling, you brought excitement and hope to an entire generation, and it's really, really cool to see the younger kids admire you the same like I loved golf before Tiger Woods showed up, but after Tiger Woods showed up, I started dressing better. I started trying to practice a little bit
wearing
more.
red. We're
Stop drinking booze on the course, and then but so I wanted to point out that one of your fans from your Masters victory at Carolier wanted me to throw that out to you. And I promised him that I would tonight.
Well, tell Joseph, I don't remember that specifically. However, anything that any fan gives me, I keep it all. I keep everything that any fan gives me, and I've got a little in my garage. I've got like these kind of like historical like newspaper clip-ins and all those things over the years that my mother, to be honest, has collected.
That's how it starts. We figured that. That's understood. We get that.
And so within that, there's fan mail and there's anything that I get given. So I definitely will still have it because I keep everything. So thank him for that. And to answer your question about the generation of two-handers, that is the surreal thing. You talk about my career and if it's surreal, and at some point maybe it'll hit me. But what hits me hardest is seeing as many people bowl the way that I do now after an entire career up until the last, say, 5 to 6 years. I think it's starting to get a little less, but up until then, complete ridicule and hate and cheating and it's been my whole existence.
And now it's 30% of the field is two-handers. Probably more. I don't even know.
It's definitely a very weird feeling, but it is super important, I think. Anyway, I think it's super important that because I usually the follow-up question to something like that is, do you think it's a better way? And I think it's super important that bowling doesn't go down a traditional process, meaning I don't think we should conform to one way or the other. I don't think we should ever tell anybody this is the better way. I feel like everyone has, Johnny, I haven't seen you all bowl, but I do know, watching you bowl, if I told you to bowl with your right hand because you should bowl with your right hand, that's how you should bowl. That's not who you are. And so no matter how much you're going to practice, no matter how good you get, it will never be who you are as a bowler. And so when someone bowls traditionally or unconventionally, the question I always ask them is, why are you doing this? Is this who you are? Because if it is, you're going to be the best version of yourself. But if it's not, you're not going to reach the same potential as if you just be who you should be as a bowler. And so that's why I think it's really important that we don't shun those that want to bowl two-handed. If it's who they want to be and it's who they are, let them go. And same thing with the tradition. We shouldn't be telling anyone, oh, your style is going to be obsolete into the future. No, it's not. There are going to be plenty of people that are going to want to bowl like EJ Tackett or like Johnny Petraglia or like Parker Bone or Norm Duke or Tommy Jones or Robert Smith. There will be plenty. It's just if we can form, and I don't like to use this word so much because I think sometimes it can be a little bit, the word is inclusive, but I think it's also quite a divisive word at times when used in the wrong context, especially in the United States. That makes perfect
sense. It means you're closing it off, and that's not the idea. Let's open it up, if anything. You're exactly right. Exactly. I just feel like, the next time someone you see write something about any player style in particular, and you see some pretty funky styles, like you see people bowling backwards, like to me, why would I care? Do they strike? Do they strike?
But my point is, like, why would I ever care to say you shouldn't do that? Like, if that's who they are, that's what makes them. They leave league bowling backwards, shooting 550 to 650, and they're having a great time with their league buddies. Like, who am I to like come in and say you're doing this wrong and it shouldn't be allowed and it's funny and you should bowl like everybody else? And then the guy does, and all of a sudden now he's lost 2 years and he decides, I'm just going to quit the game. This is not fun for me anymore. So that's, that to me is the line in the sand that I draw, is like, you may not like me, you may not like the way that I bowl, but we have so much in common. We love this game. We love it. If you didn't love it so much, and that's when I meet a hater, or if I talk to a hater, that's the first thing I let them know. I'm like, I know how passionate you are for the game of bowling. You're so passionate that you will take time out of your day to write me something nasty, which you could just scroll on by, but you don't. And you take a minute or 5 or 10 or multiple minutes to write to me to tell me how you think. So I know you're passionate about it, and I'm passionate about the game too. And so it's just like...
And you're so nice that instead of telling them to fuck off, you wind up saying something nice and be like, well, I appreciate your compliment or your opinion, but it's not really...
Well, I wonder if
not that I think that's the way to go either. Don't get me wrong.
No, but I wonder if people realize one of the reasons why I think that strategy doesn't really work. And look, maybe if your sport was as large as the NFL, and a quarterback could say to a fan, to use quite explicit language towards a hater, maybe it doesn't matter. But to me, bowling is not. We are not healthy enough for just some.
We need everybody, right?
For some, even, and I know this sounds like I know this all sounds like I'm trying to run for a campaign here. I'm not. I'm not trying to say anything.
You'd be a good pro wrestler right now,
right? But we can't afford like anyone to like make the game worse. Sure. And that can be a professional athlete, someone in control of an organization, to the guy who's decided to use his time online to make life hell for a few people about bowling. Like we just don't have the luxury to say that's fine. And look, and most of the people that I've ever bumped into or met or had these conversations with, I honestly think there's a part of them that just finds it fun. Like, do they really? Just trolling. And look, I love to troll plenty. Like, I feel like my sense of humor is, I feel like I have a good sense of humor.
You do.
But I also think
I was too busy winning or something like that.
you pick your moments, right? You pick your moments when to pull those cards out. And I feel like if we could just do that a little better, then the game will be in a better spot. I will tell you something that you may not know. When sponsors come into the game, a lot of people that I talk to that say these things, they will say things like, well, I tell them, actually, they don't bring it up. I say, I've met some of these really big sponsors, and I ask them, like, hey, what made you get so excited about bowling? And And they usually say, well, look, our teams, they did a deep dive into bowling and to the industry. And so I asked, what is that like? What does a deep dive look like? What does it mean? Well, we go to the usual suspects and we scroll social media and we take the temperature of the sport and we see which way we think it's going. And then we look at the numbers on TV. And so they do these deep dives. And so it always hurts me just a little bit when someone writes something super negative. Now, I don't think they really care about arguments and differences of opinions. I think it's more that toxicity that they're looking for. And so when I see that, I'm like, if someone's doing a deep dive, I just think about if someone's doing a deep dive right now and comes across this is not going to help the game. And so those are the ones I usually try to jump in and offer like the counterweight to what they're saying. And it might be to some random kids.
I mean, that's being an ambassador too, man. Like that's not. Rob, you had stuff going on over there, buddy?
I'm just enjoying the conversation.
This is crazy, though. Serious shit. This is just freaking crazy. Legit.
One of the guys, Jason, that has trolled you in the past was part of our segment that we usually do every week called the Imbecile of the Week. And his name is Dan Young, which you affectionately call Stan.
Stan. Oh, shit, he's here?
He has become a fan of our show, even though we call him an idiot for some of the things that he said about you. But there are people like that just do like to troll you for no reason, just to have fun, just to get a rise out of you. But we always love your comebacks. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I was busy shining my U.S. title trophy or something like that. Like, you mentioned it does get to you, but when you do pick your spots, dude, it's hilarious.
They're always home runs, man. They're always home runs.
Well, one of the things I do, and he won't believe me, but I don't remember Dan Young. I remember Stan. I remember making the comment to someone, Stan.
Oh, you already won.
But I could not remember who it was for. But however, my point that I was going to make was there are always bullets in my chamber that I'm like, oh, this will be a really good one to come back with one day. Like I've got to like save this one for the right moment. And when it happens, one of my favorite ones, and again, I can't remember who it was to. He might have been.
Stan, shut up. You lost. I'm not talking to you, Jay. This guy, he just says he won. Bullshit. You got freaking pummeled.
Oh, you're on a first name basis.
You don't even need us into your name, Stan. Go ahead, Jay. Go ahead.
The funniest one I feel like I did was I had all of my player of the someone was trashing me over something, and so I replied and said, and again, you'll have to forgive my paraphrasing because I don't remember it specifically. I just remember the image. I was holding all of my Player of the Year trophies, which at the time I think
that's what it was, yeah,
or something.
Oh, so we're 3 less of when it was.
Oh, this was a while ago. And I had my daughter write the comment back for me, apologizing that I couldn't reply personally because my hands were full. And now that I've got 7, I want to re-update that photo because I have it saved on my phone like as a favorite. So it's like it's always there for me to use sometimes, but it's old now. So I need to come back. The other one I wanted to do as well was I was going to lay on the ground and put all the major championships around like a star shape, and then have some kind of clever comeback with I'm a little busy shining my trophies. Or
yeah, like just having that opportunity. You have all this at your disposal. Like that's what's amazing.
I can make a snow angel with my major trophies.
Like Scrooge McDuck, just like going through his vault and his gold, right? Just swimming through his trophies.
I will say this. So on tour, when we're all like, and I mean, it is pure fun and games when we go with the back and forth between the players, right? I've noticed the players don't bite me. They don't try to bark at me at all.
They can't do. They can't clap back at all.
So I remember being in the group and I'm like, hey, like I want to be on this little chat to like have a go. And they're like, no. And I'm like, you say anything. It doesn't matter. It's like, dude, between us all, you own more than what we all have put together. There's nothing we can say. So I'm a little annoyed.
That's true.
You lost that deal because they're not even coming at you anymore. See, you're at the top of the mountain.
I miss those days. I miss them. I miss them.
you had a couple stretches, and it maybe goes back to you saying how much of an idiot you were when you were younger and made stupid mistakes. But I mean, you had 2-year periods where you didn't win anything at all. Can you just kind of shed some light on maybe what was going through, yourself mentally or with your game, or what kind of caused you to have a funk? I mean, obviously you always come back and you'd win at least 3 titles a year after, for Christ's sakes. But what was going on during those 2 stretches, if you remember?
Look, the first one was after my rookie season, and I think that was the year in which I decided that, because I had success in my rookie season, but I was fortunate in the way that the tournament that I won, it kind of, I could use a plastic ball and I could throw it hard, so that kind of fell into my natural game.
Right.
And then the other lane was shark, and it was long. And even though on the show I had to throw it a little bit slower, like during qualifying, the lanes are getting trashed. And so I was able to launch the ball a little over the left gutter, hit it hard, throw it firm, which again kind of fell into my wheelhouse at that time a little bit. And so you go into the sea, because if you look at my other results from that, I think I only played 7 events in my rookie season. Winning the Long Island one, but my other 6 events that they weren't great. I mean, I think I did okay in them, but they were not great. I think 2 of them I bombed. Like, I absolutely bombed, which coincidentally were the 2 commissioner exemption spots that I got for that season. I bombed those 2 tournaments. And so the year 2 rolls around, you're a champion, you're exempt, and that arrogance and that immaturity of, well, I'm just going to keep doing this all day long. Yeah, you come to realize, no, I can't beat Wes Malott. Like, I can't beat Chris Barnes, and I can't beat Tommy Jones, and I can't beat Bill O'Neill, and I can't beat these boys. It's like, I just can't. So I like on a consistent basis. So it's like, you've got to change. What's changing? Well, you're throwing bad shots, right? How do I stop that? Well, let's not throw it 1,000 miles an hour every frame, and let's see if we can't refine it. And so that was year 2. That was the moment I realized I can't do this anymore. And so moving forward, I think the next year, look, there's been a lot that, like I said, because we're not under a microscope like some other sports, I think there's a lot of things that have happened to me while being away, moments in which tragedy at home, or, just I don't want to say the pressures of home, but the sadness of being away, and that pressure of, well, you can't be home for this, and you should be. That gets to you. And I've been traveling for my career since I was 16. And so for 24 years of my life, I miss things that I don't want to miss. And it gets to you. It really hurts. And sometimes, some seasons, you have some really bad things happen to your family, and you want to be there, and you can't, because you got to provide for those that expect you to provide for them, and you have responsibilities. And so your head, those moments we talked about, JP, about focusing on only this and not getting distracted and wandering. There have definitely been a few moments in a few seasons, one of which was last season, which, even though I was fortunate to win a couple of things, that was the first time in my career in which my family and I decided I wouldn't come home because of the way the schedule worked. By the time I came home, I'd have to go back quite quickly, and it was usually always for a major championship. And so the scheduling was so poor for me, we decided, let's just stay over there, and it's going to be hard. And I thought I was going to handle it okay, but I didn't. And I really, really didn't like being away for 4.5 months in one stretch. And so you get overseas, and you're already in your head of like, this is the beginning of a 4.5 month long stretch. Like, how am I going to do this? And so your mind is not sharp. It is not where it needs to be. And so, you have these fluctuating weeks where, as a bowler, and the unpredictable nature of patterns and lane draws and carry, like, you are on an emotional roller coaster unlike anything anyone can experience. You can have a bad day at work if you work your 9 to 5, or you're a writer, or you're a painter. You can have bad days, but it's very rare that you can have a good hour, horrible hour, fantastic hour, 3 really bad hours. And then you leave the place just distraught and mentally fried, and then you got to come back and you got to do it again. And then you start off great, so you're on a bit of a high, you're on momentum, hit a bad pair, you come back down, and then you pan that back and you say, well, that was for just the day. Now you do it every day in a tournament, those ups and downs. Then you pan back again and you do it week to week, and you wonder, how am I doing this? Like, when you look at it from that perspective, the mental gymnastics that you go through, and then when you are away from home and you can't get home, and then there's bad things or good things, right? Like when your daughter performs her first whatever and wins an award, they all celebrate. I'm on FaceTime, like, and thank God for technology to at least allow me the opportunity to see them after a moment like that. But nothing will replace the, you got bullied at school by the nasty boy. Like, let me give you a hug, little girl. Like, I love you, and let's work through this. And so now you're hearing all these stories, and that's when I think this season I'm already starting to feel so much better. I've already planned to come home multiple times. I'll miss events, which I'm okay to do, and I've accepted that. And so I think that was my failure to recognize that last season. And yeah, I was fortunate enough that I was 3rd in everything, which is, you could claim that's good.
You were still there. It wasn't like you were a ghost.
But that was the saddest. As a human, I was on tour. I really didn't want to be there. I really, really wanted to be home. And so now that I've mentioned it already, I feel energetic and I feel super excited because I've got these checkpoints that I get to go home and come back, and I get to maybe not be there for everything, but instead of waiting a long time to celebrate a birthday, it's only a couple of weeks now. They have to wait till I can come home, and we do, and that's what we're planning. Any of these big moments that I'm planning to miss, we're going to reorganize a do-over for me, and that shit just, it fills you. It fills you with so much love and joy.
That makes all this other stuff worth it, basically. It makes all the hard work, the grind, the missing, it makes it worth it.
Yeah, and look, I'm not a sociable. I've changed a lot over the years. So I'm not very sociable to start with on tour anymore. I bowl. I like my downtime. I spend the time zones make it difficult. So, I like to get a lot of rest because I got to wake up at 2 a.m.
There's acclimation that your body, and again, anatomically, guys, that's what you guys don't understand. There's so much acclimation that his body has to go through, being in a 12-hour time zone difference, just to even get here to go to work.
Yeah, well, you get used to that pretty quick. Like within 3 days, I feel like I'm pretty good. But it's the are you awake? We need to talk. I've got this important thing for our family to discuss, and it's like I'm just about to go to bed. It's 1 a.m. I've got to bowl the 8 a.m. shift, so I've got to be up at 6:30. Okay, let me quickly call you. Mm-hmm. And that turns into an hour-long conversation, and that's why, so in terms of going out and going to dinner, I like to just come back to the room pretty quickly and just put my feet up and then just rest. And if I get a chance to sleep a few hours before a conversation for back home, I enjoy that. Makes me happy. So, and all these little things that you learn throughout your career to manage and to do, I think are definitely helping as the season progresses. But it's getting harder, boys. It's getting harder to leave, and it's getting more annoying because now the kids are doing more. And so, yeah, it'll get. And if anyone's listening, I'm not necessarily looking for that, Belmo moment, but I think it's more of this awareness of, if you have children yourself, if you miss certain things, and understanding that, when you bump into a pro athlete, and it doesn't matter what sport, just be aware that it's heavy on us too. It really is heavy on all of us. And so, I don't know, maybe have a little empathy when someone's a little frustrated because they stone nined and they're not interested in signing your pin. Like, maybe we don't just trash them immediately. Maybe just give them a little time, because there's a lot more to the emotional state of us than, relax, it's just a 9-pin. No, like, that might have been the 5th 9-pin that cost him something to put, a fight between him and his wife. I don't know. Like, you don't know.
Sure.
And so you've just got to be a little more, empathetic.
Well, I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I'm 47, so I waited a long time to have kids. My wife finally wore me down, and it's the greatest thing I ever did. I wish I had done it sooner. Ocho is a little bit older than me. He recently had a daughter a couple of years ago, so it is hard. Like even just podcasting or streaming, I do. Like I'm taking time away from my wife and my daughter, and even they resent me sometimes for doing that. So I can't even imagine whatever goes on in your personal relationship, and you don't have to give any details, but being gone so long, I get it a little bit, but it has to be absolutely hard, especially being so far away. It's not like you're flying to Jersey and you'll be there in a couple hours. It's a long flight.
Yeah, look, and I don't mind sharing some of the things. Like I know without doubt, for 100% certainty, I could not have had the career that I've had if not for the family that I have. I'm very close with my family, my extended family. We have a large Italian background, and so my cousins are more like my sisters and brothers. Like they're not cousins to me; they're a lot closer than that. Uncles and aunties, and everyone still lives in the same town, and so having that support network as a kid and growing up, and then building my own family and been lucky to choose a woman who fits that same ideology. And there are definitely days which are hard, but they are few and far between. And she's an incredible woman. She's a nurse, so she works as a nurse. She looks after our family when I'm gone. She maintains sanity, and she supports me. And I have emotional roller coasters, and yet she still has enough bandwidth and energy to be able to, walk me off the ledge at times, and also, push me forward. And so, I definitely am aware of how fortunate I am. I see what could have been with other players who maybe didn't choose the right partner for them in that time of their life. And it's you put your arm around the boy, because you're like, it's hard, man. Like, I'm very lucky, but it's hard for me, and everything's great for me. Imagine if it wasn't so great. Right. And so I look, everyone always asks, what are the guys on Tilly? Does anyone hate each other? Like, I think a lot of people, they really don't understand. Like, we have so much respect for each other because we are all going through the same shit. Right. It's all the same stuff.
There's definitely camaraderie for sure.
And you ask a question like, "Hey, I need help. My luggage hasn't arrived. I need a lift. Has anyone seen a backpack of mine?" Like, the boys on tour, they will move heaven and hell for each other. And I'm not joking. Like, I can ask anyone on tour for a favor if I'm in a pinch. No one has ever said no to me. And I will say no to no one. If you are in a bind, and that's the part that I think a lot of people, like, they're looking for rivalries and hatreds. And, people even talk about Sean and I, like, he's got kids, man. Like, for me, on my side of the table, like, if he said, I need some help, I'm not going to tell him to go jump. I'm going to be like, what can I do?
Right.
Because I get it. Like, the guy's got a family. We all have stuff. And even if you don't have a family, like, I was out on tour when I didn't have a family. I would have loved to have had as close a knit community on tour in my rookie season. I had PJ Haggerty, Bill O'Neill, Mike Fagan. Those three boys were instrumental in my career for that closeness and friendship. But I don't know, if they weren't around and I needed someone, there was no one. Like, today, if you look lost, it won't take very long until someone says, "Dude, what do you need? Like, do you need a ball? All right, I'll go get a ball off the truck for you. Like, what do you need? Like, what? You've lost your shoes? Like, all right, let's fucking find this guy a pair of shoes." Like, no one is trying to screw anyone, and I love that. I really do. I love the boys for that. Maybe I don't say it to them enough. Maybe that's something that I should start doing a bit more.
Well, you did it here, and everybody's going to watch this, obviously.
Sure,
so there we go. And there's your disclaimer. There it is.
Sure, let's do that. Let's cut that clip and share it around. It's important to know.
I've said it here many times that bowling isn't like any other professional sport. Not just professional bowlers, but bowlers in general love the sport so much. And it's that passion that, like you said, fuels everybody. And bowlers are the nicest people in the world. Like, you have literally won more titles arguably, other than Walter, than anybody else. But you're still down to earth. You're still, number one, willing to come on a show that no one's ever heard of. Two, you're there to sign autographs. You're there to sign, you take pictures. I mean, you're always accessible. It's got to be hard when you're in the zone and you're thinking, I had a shit block. I got to go into the bowling alley right now, and everyone wants to see you. So it is a lot of stuff that you have to go through, but bowlers in general are the coolest people on earth compared to any other sport.
Do you know the name Nick Kyrgios by any chance? He's an Australian, a tennis player, and he plays on the pro tour, and he's a bit of a loose cannon.
I do.
Nick Kyrgios.
Took me a minute to think of it, but yes.
I use him as an example in this because he plays tennis because he happens to be great at it. We bowl because we love to be great at it. And for Nick, he earns such a substantial income playing tennis that he will pursue that through the despise of having to pick up a racket. He would, I think, and I don't know him at all. I've never met the guy, but I've listened to him plenty and heard him on a few podcasts. I think he would love to play basketball. I think that's his game. He would love to be able to be good enough to play in the NBA. Like, that's his dream. He just happened to be one of the greatest tennis players, naturally gifted tennis players of all time, but doesn't love it. And so when I see us as bowlers, we're in a game where financially it is very difficult to be rich.
Sure.
Is a good word.
Yeah.
When you're the best at something, at a sport, it's not right at the tier like you said before. It's not where we all think it should be.
It's not golf, for one. Yeah.
And so you look at the bowlers and then you say to yourself, right, well, if money is not for the majority, if money is not a motivation to be here, why then? Right. And very, very few younger players. The older ones have been soured a little bit by the game. You know, like when you get into your 50s, they get a little sour about it. And so you ask the question, then why? And it's pure love. They grew up doing something. This passion has taken over. The hardship financially is worth it. It's chasing the girl out of your league, right? Like this means more to me about the love that I have for this thing that I want to get to than the potential hardship of financial worries down the road. And so that's why I think we do, as an industry, seem to have a really, and like I said earlier, there are your outliers. You do have your haters, but ultimately, the industry itself, bowlers are kind. Like, you know what? You see it probably more than anything when someone posts something online like, hey, such and such from this area's father has cancer, we're raising money for this or that or the other. And then you see, like, it may not be hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's definitely thousands of dollars, like, for that individual. And then you see them pop up everywhere. And then you look at the names and you can just recognize bowler, like this incredible list of bowlers' names of donations, $5, $10, $50, $100, and it's not like we're giving the world, we're giving what we can.
Yeah, sure.
But our community gets behind it. And I made a comment, I think it might have been to someone from the Wall Street Journal one time or someone else. I said, I wish our industry was better at keeping data, because if we could find a way to show what the bowlers have built around each other, that community, it wouldn't surprise me if in the world that bowlers have raised hundreds of millions of dollars in the lifetime of bowling of just donations to each other. Like, it wouldn't surprise me in the least. Maybe 100 million, maybe not hundreds, but I'd say I wouldn't be surprised if someone's like, yeah, like, overall, we've probably given between 50 and 100 million to each other in the lifetime, because I see thousands all the time, thousands. So I got to start thinking the numbers up there, and I do love that about our game. I do.
I appreciate you being here a little bit longer. I do have a couple questions, but EJ Tackett.
Far away.
EJ Tackett.
Okay.
You have bowled him probably more than anybody else on television, and you've traded wins back and forth over the years. What does he mean to you personally?
Yeah, I think the thing that I've appreciated about EJ more than anything is I don't think he's ever been one to be afraid to try and catch me in a tournament or in stature. You know, he's never looked at me as I can't get there. And the fact that he's like that makes me feel like I'm not going to allow him to catch me. And I'm talking career.
Iron sharpening iron right there. That's literally iron sharpening iron. Absolutely.
And I've said this on shows and publicly, like, he is a very strong motivation for me to continue to put the foot down because he's so naturally gifted and he's a winner. And it surprises people when you talk about some of the things that you don't realize about EJ is like, you know, there was a multiple year 3 or maybe even longer than that, 3 years where he didn't win, but he was on the show every other week and we bumped into each other a bunch of times. And then, yeah, I think even Randy started to talk about it on the shows. It's like, man, what's wrong? Why can't EJ win? Like, why does he always get in these moments and one goes out the window and everything? And I remember I don't remember actually where we were, but I remember talking with EJ about it. And I said to him, you know, like, it just takes one. Like, once you get one again, like, it's going to be really hard to beat you. And so for my sake, I hope you don't win for a little longer so I can win a bunch more.
Sure.
And then, you know, naturally, as you saw, like, last season, and it was really the end of the season prior to that where you could just get a sense that something had changed a little bit. You know, he'd made some shots on TV, doubled in the 10th at times, and you're like, he hadn't been doing that for a few years. But when he does, he's going to be really, really tricky to beat. And, yeah, for me, I saw it firsthand at the World Championship when in the years gone by, we have had a lot of close matches, and there is always a moment where he overthrows one. It gets quick on him and he just doesn't quite catch it. And so everything on Spectre will look great. It'll hit the same line, but you'll see it just go a fraction longer.
Right.
Wash out or something like that. Or
2-8-10 or something. And I think it was like in the 8th frame, I was like, he's not going to do it this time. Like, you just kind of could tell because he wasn't overthrowing anything. I think he tripped something early. I don't remember what it was. I think he had like a 4-pin or something that I think just kind of just let him settle a little quicker. And then for the next 10 frames, it was like, I can't miss. And I missed once. And ultimately, that's all it took, right? And EJ...
You lost to a robot, basically, even though you missed one shot.
Yeah, right.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, well, one time it was when we both kind of were settling into the title match. Yeah. And so we were neck and neck, and then we started to strike together. Mm-hmm. And then that was when you're like, who's
blinks first?
That's right. Who's going to blink first? Now, in my career, I've been able to, against EJ, and I don't know what the record is. I think it might be like 8 or 9-3. So it's a little heavier on my side. And prior to that match, it was one less.
No.
Yeah, right. He's the one starting to now get the momentum.
100%. And so you look back at those matches, and it's not anything against EJ. It's just there was a moment where it was enough because I made sure looking at this guy, like, I can't afford to do that to him. I can't afford to give him the space. So you've got to make your shots. And he would always give me that one, and that's all it would take. And then to have it happen to you, it's kind of like one of those, when Batman is always disappearing on someone and then he's talking to somebody and then they disappear on him and he turns around and he says, so that's what that feels like. That's kind of the moment I had with EJ. Yeah, when I 3-6-10 spared it, double to force into double, and then he did. I was like, yeah, that's how that feels. Okay, I get it now. Yeah, I get it. And so EJ is, other than off the lanes, I think we're quite good friends. On the lanes, he's just a huge motivator. And I'd like to think that, he's definitely looks at me the same way.
To me, it's Jordan versus Bird. It's Manning versus Brady. And now it's Mahomes and Josh Allen. Like, you and EJ to me, that's the rivalry.
I think you need to add another person into that trio now. I think it's more it's the Federer, Nadal, Djokovic. Yeah, I think it's the comparison now should be the Novak, Nadal, and Federer comparison, where there's three of us that are kind of in a triangle here.
That's fair. Okay.
I think basically it's, again, I hate crossing generations when it comes to like the greatest of all time. I prefer the greatest of each generation. But to me, it's like you're Mark Roth and here comes Marshall Holman and Wayne Webb. Like they're trying to catch.
They're nipping at your toes.
And Mark Roth's like, you know what? I won Player of the Year 3 straight years. Who's this Holman guy? Who's this Webb guy? Fuck it. I'm going to win an 84 again just to let them know. I'm going to win 34 titles, and they only have 22 and 20. It's happening in present day now. It happens in every single generation.
It's true.
And it's really, really cool to witness. Again, me, I'm almost 40 as well. And I'm watching it happen before my very eyes. And it's everybody's chasing you, and you just know that. And like you've said several times on this show tonight, that's your mode. The same way EJ is motivated by trying to beat you and no hesitation, or Simo, or these guys are always trying to develop something to combat what you have already innovated and everybody else has imitated. I mean, here they come. They're trying to be you. Everybody in golf is trying to be Tiger. Everybody in baseball is trying to be Aaron Judge, Mike Trout, Bryce Harper, guys like that. I mean, it's still fanboying.
Yeah, that's a mark-out moment, which is totally good. Totally good. What a great way to capitalize on everything there.
No, I appreciate that. I very, very much appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, I think Anthony is definitely making me and everyone else on tour, work a little harder at certain things. And I know. I think that's good. I think that competition is good. I think that's like maybe EJ and I started this off, but now Anthony's there, and it's just another piece of wood in the fire that's making the fire grow a little bigger. It's nice. Look, believe me, there are times where I say to myself, man, I'd rather everyone just be a lot worse than me, and I can just make this I can make these next few years, win another 5 majors, and then call it a done.
Right.
But
you haven't turned gray yet, so you got that going for you.
No, I did find one little piece of
son of a bee sting.
Yeah, I was going to pull it out, and my wife told me to leave it. She thinks it's cute, so I might leave it. But I think it's good having players push each other. I do. Otherwise, I just think sports becomes a little redundant if you don't have it.
Well, I mean, Seimel's got to be. I mean, you could tell he was frustrated last year because he had a ridiculous year. Any other year, against you or EJ, and he's player of the year. He's the man. I mean, he bowled fantastic.
Generational thing, right? Like, and something that I've spoken even with Bill O'Neill about, and just other players. It's like, when Novak, Nadal, and Federer, if they were born 5 years, 10 years on either side of each other, then who knows how many majors they'd all have, because they weren't playing against each other.
True.
And, I would reference that even for Bill and for those guys. I'm like, it's if we were all born just far enough apart from each other, I think all of our careers would be better. Like, we're all so great.
Right. Everyone's in the mix and beating each other up.
We're taking away titles from each other. And then you look at guys like Anthony, I think he's 26 now. Like, he's been on tour, which a lot of people don't realize. They're so young, and EJ is the same. They were on tour when they were teenagers.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they came out when they were 16, and maybe EJ was a little older. He might have been, if not 19, early 20s. There has to be more, because he's 30 now. Yeah, maybe this might be his 10th or 11th year on tour now, which you think about that, right? And then you look at their careers, and it's like they're so young and they've been out there so long.
Right.
Like, and that's also so hard to teach. It's like you need the experience to bowl against us to get really good. You have to do your hard years. You just have to. I did it my first and my second year. Like, they were tough years for me. And so does everybody else. But when you're 16, you can afford to have a couple of tough years in front of you, because
26.
Yeah, and now EJ's starting a family, which is awesome. And so it's going to be a really interesting dynamic, with seeing how it almost is a lens into my past. It's like, I came out a little later than they did. I was 27 when I came out on tour, but I didn't have any children. My Kimberly could travel with me. So she wasn't constrained to home for any reason. And so those first few years is where they have been for the last 10 years. And now they're starting to change paths. Like, Natalie's going to be at home with the baby a little more, and maybe EJ is going to come home more, and maybe the baby comes out with them. And it's, sorry guys, I can't stay out late tonight, or I can't hang out tonight because we want to get the baby into bed. Like, there's a lot of things, and it's just, you kind of have this lens into the past and go, I know exactly how it is. And then you gain more respect for them when they compete, because you're like, yeah, it's a heavy day today. Your kid is sick, right? Yeah, I heard your kid. I hope the kid's okay. You okay? Like, you understand the respect level just keeps going up, because, each moment in everyone's life, an engagement, a marriage, a childbirth, a death in the family, like whatever it is, we've all experienced these things ourselves. And so there's this mirror that you can see in each player. And again, it's probably not talked about enough. And just how much respect we have for each other and what we're going through. No one shits on anyone. As far as I know, no one shits on anyone when they're having a tough time of it out there. No one's laughing at them. They're not the butt of any joke, as far as I'm aware. And I'm around a lot of people, and I never hear anyone go, did you see Johnny Petraglia Jr. suck again this week? Isn't that hell? No one is saying that, right?
And that was on league only.
So again, I think it needs to be known.
Good to know. I mean, that's some
different perspective for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's you guys still are human. We watch you guys for the hour and a half on the television, or 2 hours, and then as soon as you guys are off the TV set, well, you must have already done whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's.
Well, I would really recommend you and all your viewers right now to go and go on YouTube and watch the Darren Tang channels, the house channels. I'm starting to do a little bit more of the behind the scenes stuff, and so Brad and Kyle when they do their on tour stuff. Nate Garcia and his partner Elise do some stuff from behind the scenes. Like, it's growing, right? There's more and more of Kevin Williams does a lot on his social media, sharing not just his music, but a little insight into what's going on. And I think it's fascinating because, I really do think that when you watch those videos, you do get to see a slightly different perspective. Now, of course, it is edited, and so not everything that happens is seen, but you get more than what you get now. And then, which I don't even know is public knowledge. Maybe, yeah, well.
I mean, I've seen a Brad and Kyle show where he's like, well, I spent such and such to get in the tournament and I didn't make the cut. And he put it on it and he wrote it out. He said, I lost $380 this week between my meals, my food, whatever. I'm making up the number, but like, talk about insight.
It was a lot more than $380.
I'm sure. But I don't want to downplay what the guy made or didn't make or something like that. But it's here's a guy that went to work and lost money. You know what I mean? Like that's what people don't understand.
Well, this season,
that insight is pretty wild.
This season, I believe there's a deal that's been worked out with the PBA for a crew. A few years ago, actually, it was right before COVID. I had worked out a deal with a production company to do a Netflix documentary and follow me around. And it all started at the US Open, which, when you look back at it, it was it's so sad that because COVID started to happen, that went away. But in 2019, I made the show for the Open. This was, at this time, the tournament that I'd never won. So it was the one major that I hadn't won yet. And I make the show, and I think I bowl Anthony, and I have a horrible show. Everything I did was wrong. And when you're bowling on the US Open, you can't be wrong by a board. You got to be wrong by like 5. If you're wrong by 5, it's okay. It'll go Brooklyn, or you'll just leave the 1, 2, 4. But if you're wrong if you're wrong by a board, you leave everything. It's just a disaster. And so everything I made a move was like I was 1 or 2 off every time. Anyway, so I was pretty devastated. And the crew's following me around, right? And I'm like, this is pretty heavy. This is pretty hard. So they follow me around and doing all this. Anyway, we get the news that we're going to put together all this footage. We're going to come back the next year and kind of follow it along, and it starts to wind down, and things are starting to get a bit shaky. And then I win the US Open the second year, but they're not there to see that all unfold, and we're still talking about it. And I'm like, oh man, it sucks that you weren't here. We'd picked some other things to do, and then COVID happens, and I was like, man, that really sucked, because now it's done. The funding's gone. Everyone lost money in COVID. Well, these people lost money in COVID, pulled out of it, and I was miserable, because I'm like, that would have been a really cool story to tell. Well, now the PBA's found another group that wants to do it. It's a company called A24. And if you do your research on who A24 is as a production company, super successful production company. They win many, many Emmys for their work in television. And so they're super excited. So at the Players Championship was the first event, and it will be happening again at the US Open. They had a little crew come out and follow some of the players around for the week and get the behind the scenes and get the ups and the downs. And, we're all mic'd up and we're talking. It was great. And the idea, I think, is to kind of bring a little bit of that Drive to Survive Netflix series for the F1 and Match Point for the tennis. And then I think
the quarterbacks they have now too.
The quarterbacks, they had a golf one as well. And so, there's obviously a market there to tell the behind the scenes of these professional events. And so now I'm a bit closer to it and a little bit more a part of that. So I'm really excited to see how
that's going to be awesome.
Shapes up. Yeah. And so, like I said, I'm not entirely sure. I don't think they will care I said it, but I don't think there's been any formal announcement. So I said it on my YouTube channel, and I sent it to them on my YouTube channel, and I didn't hear back from them about negative things. So I was like, maybe I can talk about it.
Well, as big as we are, you'll hear from them tomorrow, probably.
You'd be surprised who does those deep dives.
Yeah, I bet. I'm glad you brought up the YouTube stuff, because that was going to be a segue. It was cool to see, from your perspective, a lot that you went through last year, especially the ridiculous run that you had, that you were able to capture on film as it happened. That's a cool thing, and that's another reason why we all love technology, is we get to see behind the scenes stuff. And I'm glad that the PBA is going to do that, because one thing I've said, I've been very critical of, not the PBA really, but Fox in general, is why should I, as a casual fan, not just as someone who loves bowling, but if I'm a casual fan and I flip through the channels, why should I be invested in somebody I don't know anything about? And I always wanted more to be told about the players. I don't care about the games during the week or anything like that, but I want to know more about the person. So if I'm going to invest an hour and a half or 2 hours of my time, I want to know more about the people that I should be rooting for and should care about.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Let me ask you this question, right? Let's say I came on your show again, okay, and someone tunes in for the first time. Every time I'm on your show, are you going to run that intro, or are you, at every single time I come on this show, are you going to tell everybody what I've achieved and who I am and what I'm going to do and what my family's like? And I mean, every time I'm on your show. So let's pretend you're now, let's say, I don't know how many shows a year I make on the Pro Tour, but let's call it a round number of, say, 10.
Okay.
So let's say every year for 10 years, I come on this podcast 10 times. And then by the end of it, at some point, you've got to be thinking, man, this guy is on here so much. Do I need to spend 15 minutes of every show, or do I need, the Johnny to be like, oh my God, I'm fanboying here. Like if it was 10 times every year, at what point do you say, okay, he's a regular on the show, I don't need to do that anymore. I need to talk about something or someone else, right? So that's the first question.
Okay.
Like you asked about that, but our tour, if you look at the players who make shows, very rarely do we have 5 people you've never seen before in your life.
That's usually what I was just going to say, actually.
You have repeat offenders, right? You have the usual suspects. They're all there. And so how many times can you introduce someone until someone like you says, oh, come on, Fox, this is bullshit. You're trying to tell me you need to intro Belmo? Like, why are you introing Belmo like I've never heard of him before? He's the greatest of blah, blah, blah. So there's a fine line between introducing who we are to the mainstream that maybe don't know who we are,
right,
and also staying loyal to our loyal fan base. That's like, I respect you enough to know that you know this guy and you know certain things about the game. the other thing you have to remember is, and we try to, I think the fans, because we're not as transparent as we could be. And what I mean by that is there are certain things that happen on the show that there aren't in anyone's control. It's just we had a roll-off in the match. So now the time that we have for the rest of our slot is less for the things that we already have scheduled to be built in.
Right.
And so when something happens, and I know JP, and I remember listening to an episode on this very show where you got annoyed because at the end of the show, the champion didn't have a chance to say his thank yous and acknowledge the people in his corner. And I remember thinking when I heard that at the time, that's not how it is. That's not Fox. That's not the PBA saying screw the player and their speech. It's for every second that we are on the air outside of our slot, we are paying for that at an exorbitant amount of money. It is very expensive to go over. Very expensive.
Yeah, sure.
And so when something happens in the show, and then it's like, and Kimberly, you'll see it. She's really, really great at her job, Kimberly Pressler. If you do get a chance to talk, she will find a way to either give you the look in her eyes. She'll tap you on the arm. She'll sometimes use her foot to nudge you, and that's just stop. Right now, we're running out of time. And if you keep going, and I know you want to say thank you to my wife, thank you to this, but if you don't, that's going to cost us tens of thousands of dollars. So stop.
I get that. The good was how much time there was, I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to illustrate to Rob, right? Like there are elements that I understand the fan base are like, well, why isn't this happening? And you're right, there are so many things that we definitely need to get better at, but there are some things that you just be more aware of. Right? Is the show started on time? Did we start a little late? Because if we started a little late for some other reason, we don't get those minutes at the end.
Right.
So we lose those minutes, right? Or if it's edited and it's a tape delay and you go like, well, where was this? Well, maybe we had to cut it up more than we wanted to because of certain things. Oh, the story on Ryan Barnes as an example, right? Like, why didn't we hear more about that? Dude, like we ran all we could. Like if you want to get to know Ryan Barnes more, you got to go somewhere else to find that information. I hate that, but that's not because we don't want to do it. Like, God, man, I'd love it if it was like the tennis or the golf where we had 12 hours of the day.
Right.
Okay.
And we're like, we can bring in whoever we want. We can run those packages that you just ran, about me. We can run 15 of these packages on players. So we don't. Now, where I think we can do that is on social media. Do I think the PBA has done a good job at storytelling who we are through social media and through their resources there? No, I don't. I think shows like yours, the PBA should have a licensed show, a podcast that is for free on socials, driving traffic towards them, and
well, if you want to make an offer to them for us, I'm just saying,
Belmo, this is such a good point, and I want to explain my stance, because typically when I say something on here, whether it's a rant or not, I try and back it up with some factual information before I blow my gasket. The one thing that has not changed since bowling was an ABC production is you typically don't see any show with more than 4 matches, right? There's usually a ladder, whether it's 5 guys or 4 guys, but in a standard 5-man ladder, there's 4 matches on the show. When the PBA was on ABC, and again, this is me, I'm a little bit older mentality because of dad, but in a span of a 90-minute segment on ABC, 90 minutes compared to the 2 hours that we have now, we would have sideline reports before and after matches with each player. We would have a trophy presentation. We would have a 5-minute clip of Schenkel, wherever they were, whether he's showing you Tombstone, Arizona, when you were at Golden Pin in Tucson, whether you're looking at the lakes, like Lake Erie or Toledo. You would have time for a segment. You would have time for the 4 games. You would have time to show the top 24 with every player throwing a shot throughout the week. Every player would be interviewed, and then everybody would be presented with the check from the tournament host.
All right, so time out, because this is super important, right? Sure. No question what you're saying happened. Now I want you to go back and watch a full show. Count how many commercials there were. Count how long the commercials were. Count how much money was invested in that portion of a telecast to what you see today. And that's not just bowling, right? You watch any major sports show. What are the networks doing? Selling sponsorships, selling commercial space. How do they do that? I'm almost positive someone's in the ear of someone saying, hey, call a timeout, will you? It's a blowout. Like we need to run a few ads here. Or maybe the umpire. But that's
no, you might be right. You may be right.
That's a heavy accusation.
No, but you may be right, yeah.
No,
you probably have seen it, though, so that's why you said it.
Belmo said that the NBA is... Nah.
But you have to say to yourself, when you see commercials at certain times, that's not just because
right.
That's the network saying we can sell these slots for a lot of money. So if there's more of them, then we're going to sell more. We're going to be able to make more money. What disappoints me is in our climate today, we have more opportunity to sell sponsorships, but we're not making as much money.
Correct.
Now, that's not just, that's not me, having an event here. The PBA aren't happy with that. No one's happy that we aren't playing for millions of dollars every week. And so sometimes, you need to take a step back and go, right, well, maybe we need to really redefine how we chase that. But to go back to your point, and I do have a big gripe with your dad's generation. And I've told it to your dad before, because they're protected. That generation is protected, and everyone looks at it as if it was the golden years and It was amazing, and because of bowling back then, and we miss it and we want to go back to it. The problem that I have with it is, and I use this term understanding how harsh it sounds, is they fucked up. Because they had the numbers, they had the pool with ABC, they had the opportunity to buy bowling centers and land and property. They had all of the opportunities given to you when you have the world at your feet, and they didn't do it. No, I don't know why. Right, I wasn't in those meetings in the 50s and 60s and 70s, but when you were talking about the heydays and the 90-minute shows, my question is, why blame us today for where we're in? We should have been protected from that generation and doing their due diligence to say, wow, we are very powerful with ABC. We are very powerful with these sponsors. Where are we going to spend our money, PBA? How are we going to look into the crystal ball?
Wow.
But the biggest fault that bowlers tend to have is when you have a player of the year season, you think you're going to have a player of the year season for the rest of your career. And so a lot of players, young and old, find themselves looking down the barrel of a week-to-week paycheck because they thought it was always going to be, the pins will always fall for me. I'm bowling great. Everything's going to be fine. And maybe that generation, if they had the foresight to say, what if in like 30 years from now, we're not number one? Like, what if we're not getting multi-year platinum?
What if we don't have 25 tour stops and,
what if the Don Carter, Dick Weber contracts for the $1 million stuff? Like, what if that stops?
Right.
No one ever thought like that back then. I think like that right now. I've been thinking like that about my own career. Like since 08 or 09, what if next year I don't bowl well? What am I going to do? And every year I think, what if this stops? What if this stops? And I'm always thinking about how am I going to make sure I'm diversified enough that I survive. That's my gripe with the older generation. And so anytime someone of that era says to me some comment about how when it was in my day, it was so much better. And I always go, and you messed it up.
Yeah.
That you had the chance. We don't. Yeah. We don't have that pool and that opportunity now. We can't push ourselves into a room and boast we get 7 million people watch us every single Saturday afternoon. Holy shit, you know what we could do if we could walk into a room at one of these places and say 7 million people every week want to watch us? Dude, when I tell you can walk in there and point a gun at someone and they would say, no problem, guys. You do what you got to do. Just keep showing us those ratings every week. Like, you could do whatever you wanted. And so
This is wild.
You know, I don't know. I have so much respect for so much of the past, and your father is a part of that, right? The respect that I have for him as an athlete, it always, my ears always turn a little bit when I hear someone, and even if it's your dad, and he says something like, well, it was better when I was around, and I go, yeah. So let me tell the other side of the story. If it was so good, why did we lose it all? What happened?
The forward thinking that you're implementing here is a product, I think, also of our generation, because you obviously know I'm huge into bodybuilding. So obviously we all know who Arnold Schwarzenegger is, but I'm a huge fan of Jay Cutler.
Yeah, but Dr. Ocho's arms are bigger than yours. So
that's fair. That's fair point.
I don't understand. Oh, okay, you got the shoulders. Right, right. That makes sense.
But,
okay, I get it.
Jay Cutler flat out said after he won his fourth Mr. Olympia, he thought he was going to win. His goal was to win 5 and then branch off into other parts of the industry, product lines, social media coverage, everything along these lines. And he continued a career where in bodybuilding, your career ends at a certain time. So you can either be a forward thinker and you can advance it the way that he did, or like Arnold. I won Olympia 7 times. Now I want to be an actor. Now I want to be a governor. They're always trying to that forward mentality of thinking, and they're moving with the times. This goes back to the be like water comment we talked with Bruce Lee earlier. I am right on the cusp because I am a product of one of the legends of the golden era. So I can't stray away from it too much. The same way I'm 100% in agreement with you, because I like to listen to learn. Everything you're telling me, the product placement, the advertisement space, that's all new to me because I never looked at that before. But now that it's being introduced to my brain, now at least I'm aware of it. Okay, now I understand why in a 2-hour show, they don't want to make time to ask the guy who just won the tournament how he feels.
It's not that they don't want. That's the big thing. And I want to make a point here. I saw a comment about Rob Stone and how everyone, a lot of people, I don't like Rob Stone. Rob Stone's we need to, this needs to be said and understood. When Bolaro came, just before Bolaro, we were with ESPN, and that relationship was not 100%. It wasn't awful. It just, we didn't know where we were going with ESPN. It didn't feel like a happy relationship. It just felt like, well, we'll keep you going and we're happy to take what we can get. Rob Stone used to work for ESPN long time ago, and he bounced around, and then he made his way into Fox. And now within the Fox organization, Rob Stone is somebody. To the point, he tells Fox executives, we need to have bowling on our airwaves. We need to look after them. We need to have good stuff. Now, if you look at our Fox coverage where we now have data on the screens and we have more live shows now than we have in the last 10 years.
True.
There's one guy pulling those strings within Fox working with the PBA, and that's Rob. So whilst you may find his voice somewhat irritating, or maybe you don't like that he tells a joke here or there, understand his passion for the PBA is second to none. He put himself out there with Fox, with a company he was moving forward. He's going high at Fox, and he sticks his neck out for the PBA and tells everybody we need to put this on our airwaves. And the relationship with Fox has been better than ESPN. The live shows, the viewership's been great. Fox and Rob is not on every show. Rob comes in when he can. He wants to be there. He will be there when he can. And so it's not like he's there every week and he's a nobody. This is somebody who we really need to understand. So I'm not saying you need to appreciate his commentary style, or you need to enjoy what he has to say when he's commentating.
It's another behind the scenes thing that we don't know.
You can not like it all you want. However, when you go to say something, just be aware, just be a little more aware that if not for Rob Fox, I don't know what happens with Fox. I don't know where we are with ESPN. And I definitely know for a fact we are better with him than we are without him.
Well,
Until someone comes along and says, I've got a bunch of money and I've got better relationships over here. Sure, and that's a decision the PBA will have to make. But as it is right now, we need friends like Rob who... Yeah, they go to bat for it. There's no reason. There is zero reason for him to go to bat for us other than he loves us.
Sure.
He loves us.
He can come in, do his job, and go home.
I definitely want people to understand.
Thank you for bringing that up. And that's
speaking of which, I'm gonna ask Jason. You said you had an hour. It's almost 10 on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Did you miss weed or something?
No, honestly, I say an hour because then I have an out.
In case it sucks. Right.
Which from doing interviews,
everybody hey, listen,
everybody does it.
Started at an hour. Sometimes it's a 30-minute thing.
I got 28 minutes, so I'm just going to give you the heads up now.
And if the call is going a certain way,
and here's a 20-minute intro of those 28 minutes.
Close the laptop.
Well, I've interviewed wrestlers, bowlers, various people in different walks of life. They all do the same thing. It's literally
how about this? All right, how about this? Because you're right, I can't stay up forever. But let's say,
that's just it.
Let's say I'm happy to end it whenever you want to end it. But let's say at 15 the hour, I'm in bed.
Okay, all right, that's fair.
So you've got 23 minutes. So, how long do you have? 23 minutes. Let's go.
He could do math too on the fly. What can't Belmo do? Seriously, it's
22 and a half minutes, 22 minutes, and now 26 seconds, 25 seconds. So
there's one question I was almost going to avoid asking, but I feel like if I didn't do my due diligence, I would feel bad. You mentioned earlier, I don't know, hour and a half ago, about some of the people that are very vocal about two-handed bowling. One of those is PBA Hall of Famer Brian Voss. He was very public about his dislike for two-handed bowling. Have you ever had a personal conversation with him to kind of to explain any of it at all?
No. So BV and I considered Brian a friend. I actually still consider Brian a friend. I haven't seen him for a very long time because he doesn't bowl on the national tour anymore.
Right.
But when all that was going down, which was a long time ago now, the one thing that I've never been able to truly understand is their referencing I play a different game because of the thumb. It's really all down to the thumb.
Right.
That's why I play a different game. And I've never understood that because there are challenges bowling with two hands that one-handers don't experience either. And so I feel like there's a little this going on, right? What you guys don't have to worry about, we might have to, and what you have to worry about, we don't have to. And there are some huge advantages like rev rate. I understand that it's a lot easier to impart revolutions on the ball two-handed. But to me, that's an evolution of the style and technique of the game, as it is watching pitchers throw 100-mile-an-hour fastballs today. Their technique is different to how it was mechanically. Maybe not as drastically different viewing as what it looks like from one-handed bowling to two-handed bowling, but the techniques are better, the trainings are better. The two-handed backhand in tennis is different. The way a golf ball is hit today comparatively to when so every sport has these evolutions within them, and we sometimes don't notice them or think of them to be as drastic as they are because they still look closer to what they did 30 years ago than what two-handed bowling looks like to one-handed bowling 30 years ago. It's more visually polarizing. And so I think people jump to the idea of it's completely different. But the truth is we stand behind the same line, we bowl the ball on the same wood, and we got to knock over the same pins. And so...
And you still technically throw with one hand. I mean, you're releasing the ball with one hand.
and I don't like playing that card because that's cement. That's not in true spirit of the argument. They're arguing it's a different technique, and I agree, it's a different technique. And if anyone that that's two-handed says, "Oh, but I release the ball with one hand," just say, "Pump the brakes, bro." Yeah,
right.
We know,
right.
But let's not get into these argumentative details. Let's be true and be real. Let's have a proper conversation about this. I bowl differently to how they did 30 years ago, 20 years ago, right? And so to me, that's got to be the very first step in understanding each other. You've got to be honest, and you've got to be very, very aware of of those little parlor tricks, because you're not going to move the needle with anyone if you try to tell someone, but with one hand though, it's a one-handed release, so it's still one-handed. No, that's not going to help anyone.
Do you think people? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Do you think people just give you shit because of your success? I mean, we've seen in all sports, people hated Jeff Gordon because he won so many championships and stuff like that. I mean, nobody gives Butcher shit for his release. Nobody else is throwing it the way he does it. Nobody throws it the way Smallwood throws it. Like, is it because you were so successful?
Well, I think in this country in particular, it got its loudest when I started to have more success. But my whole career, I've been faced with this. It's just you didn't hear about it because it was in Australia
right.
or it was in Asia, or like, and because it was on a smaller platform, it's not as loud. It probably didn't hit me as hard as it did than when I came to the United States.
Sure.
And this is where, of all the countries that I've been to, this is a very, very polarizing country. Like, this is, you are on one side of the fence or the other for a lot of issues.
That's
right?
True. That's true.
And bowling just is one of those things where we can't seem to sit on the same side of the fence. We can't share the fence together. We seem to want to have to pick. We have to say yes or no. And I don't know why we have to. So when Brian wrote his article, like, I could understand it. I read it from his perspective. I disagreed with it. I'm like, I don't see it like that, but right. I can see why you think that. But I just don't think that was the best thing for the game. He'll argue the opposite. He thinks the game, it would be better if we separated each other, and he wants, some kind of, like, what's the word he used? I think he said we were a growing cancer or a growing disease in an already cancerous industry or sport. I think that was the quote. It was a long time ago. So
yeah, no, you're right.
Around with me for long enough, but I couldn't see how that was a benefit to the game. And so I have a very strong passion that wherever I go, appearance or otherwise, it's about, I don't give a shit how you throw the ball, dude. I don't care. You want to be outlandish and bowl, like I said, backward, like, do whatever. If it means that you're happy and it means that you're going to turn up every week, then I'm
And if
happy.
you're knocking pins down, you're doing something right too.
But dude, even if they're not, but they leave the venue thrilled,
and you walk out and that was a fun day. Yes, for sure.
Like, and I've got 4 kids. I love them, and they're the greatest.
You got 4 kids?
I got 4 kids, and so like, as a father, I'll always think, my kids are amazing, but there will be things that they are not amazing at, and so as long as whatever it is that they're doing makes them happy, then it's got to make them happier than make them sadder. That's right. The thing. It's not necessarily about, well, you should be happy if you lose. It's just, does what you're doing make you happier? And if this thing that you're doing because I'm asking you to do it is making you a sadder individual, then as a father, I don't want to force you to do something that is genuinely making you unhappy. So, and that's the same thing, that coaches are now getting, questioned with kids. It's like kids come up to me and thank me because they point to me essentially as an idol to say, don't tell me I can't when this guy over here is doing it.
Yeah.
And doing it at that level, like, let me do my thing. And so that to me is something I take a lot of pride in, and that people look to me as like, it's okay now because he's done it. Like, So I had to push through it all. But now that I'm here, the amount of fan mail of like, oh, dude, thank you so much. Because you did it, like, now I tell my coaches that it's okay, and they are in the game still, and they bowled their highest game, or they do something to let me know what's happened. And it's always nice. It's always like, I did something great and I'm thrilled and I'm so excited and bowling is the best. And like, that's the shit that we need. Imagine telling that kid a month before that he's got to quit bowling the way that he does and bowl some other way. Like, your kid's going to be miserable.
Have you had a conversation with your kids? Because I know, Johnny has talked about on the show before, being the son of a living legend like his dad, and you could say Ric Flair's kids were the same, or Hulk Hogan's kids. Have you had any conversations with your kids about bowling or about them trying to follow in your footsteps, or you just kind of let them do whatever they want?
I want to add to that question. because similar to what you're saying is, I'll say this about my dad. Growing up, a bowling ball was never forced into my hand. It was forced into my hand by outside people. Oh, that's Petraglia's kid. And I happened to look pretty throwing a bowling ball, and I was a teenage phenom. But my dad was also the guy who bought me an Ibanez acoustic guitar for Christmas because I wanted to learn how to play. And he got me lessons. And he befriended baseball scouts, and I got drafted by the Indians out of high school thanks to Phil Rossi into AA. Dad was always supportive of anything I wanted to do. Nothing was ever forced on me. So I think that's pretty cool when you come to talking about your children. And the last comment before you answer the question, in the movie Moneyball, I don't know if you've seen it, but the story of Billy Beane and the Oakland Athletics when the A's won 20 straight after implementing the statistical configurations on producing runs, overpaying players substantial money. When he goes to Boston at the end of that season after losing in the division series, and he sits down with the owner of the Red Sox, he hands him the highest paid salary ever to a GM at that point and says the first guy through the door always gets the bloodiest. But you've not only eclipsed that hump, but now everybody is starting to follow your model. And in another 10, 15, 20 years from now, forget the 40 or 50% of the world that now throws it like you. It'll be 70 or 80. So, sorry, Rob. I just want to throw this.
No, you're fine.
No. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there.
Sorry.
That's okay. Where to start? Look, my children know first and foremost that, and we joke about it a little bit, is I don't know much about everything, but I know everything about this one thing. And so if any of them have any desire to pursue a career into it, I will be able to help them the most. With that said, I have, like, as your father has done with you, JP, I have never told any of them that you are expected to bowl. Every one of my children will bowl league when they're young enough and they're old enough. They're young and old enough to enjoy league. And the moment that they say this isn't for me anymore, Dad, then I pull them out. And so that happened last season with my eldest daughter, who was 13 at the time, maybe 12, it might have been 2 seasons ago. And she said, Dad, I really want to take this time to do more dancing and singing. And I love it, and that's what I love. Sure thing, baby. So we took her out of league, and she does that. So now Hugo, my son, his favorite sport is bowling. And he said,
are they all two-handers? Let's get the cat out of the bag there.
So Aria, my eldest daughter, she was one-handed. She went to two-handed, and then the two-hand kind of turned into this two-handed backup, and then it turned into, like, she was not a coordinated bowler. She was not. She was not the one that I was expecting was going to go pro, right? Just looking at that, and then she finished off her last the last half of the last season bowling just one-handed straight down the middle, and she loved it. She was having fun. She just had so much more fun dancing and singing. So we took her out.
That's
Hugo,
cool.
Who's 12, nearly 12. He's the more talented one. The difference between him and I is I was born at the bowling center, and I spent every day at the bowling center because my parents owned it and worked it, and that's where I spent every waking minute that I wasn't asleep or at school. And so for him, that's not my job. My job isn't at the bowling center. And so he doesn't get to spend the hours upon hours every single day bowling.
He's got stethoscopes from your wife and, like, thermometers and whatnot.
He's got other things going on. So, yeah, 100%. And he's a big cricket fan, loves cricket, loves rugby. So he's got sport outside of bowling. And so he's very good. Like, the kid's 11, and he finished runner-up in an under-18 youth tournament in Orange, not in my hometown, not that long ago. And he bowled against a member of the Australian youth training squad. So this kid is good, this other kid. And, he came second. And so I always say to him, you don't have the opportunity to spend as much time on the lanes. However, what you don't get in training time, dude, I am going to share with you whatever I can. And so for that aspect, I think he's so much smarter than I was at his age, but I think I had so much more instinct and so much more natural talent. and so much more practice. So I think, at some point we're going to figure out what he wants to do.
Implementing both of them could be the magic recipe too, though.
It very much well could be. Exactly, and that's the other thing. So
you're right at the cusp, younger, I feel like, too, with him. Like, 12, 13, it's like, all right, that's when the body starts to change. Let's see where, there's little things, but that's the point of
little education here about the body. Go on, do tell. What happens?
I don't know. I only read it out of a book. I took a correspondence course.
Let's not make this any more awkward. And so if he decides to, then fantastic. Sylvie, she's the next one. She is just about to start bowling league, but she loves gymnastics, dancing. That's her thing. If I could count how many cartwheels and flips that she does in a day, and this would be heavily underestimated, it would be more than 100. Every single day, she will flip and cartwheel herself everywhere, more than 100 times throughout the day. And that's including like sleeping time. Like, she is just, if she's got to go from here to there, she will flip her way there.
That's cool.
Every time.
That'll help her inner ear over time too. Not even joking. I swear to God, it will help.
Okay. And then Bowie's 2. So we don't know what Bowie's gonna be into. But I don't know. I think it's super important. I tell you the truth. The God's honest truth, why we bowlers maybe don't necessarily have that same, like, hey, you've got to go do this, is because it's built on passion for us. And maybe because the carrot in bowling is much, much smaller.
Yeah, what's the future, too?
The payoff is not as predetermined.
That's true.
Yeah, if you're a father and you see talent in your 4-year-old kid swinging a golf club, maybe the father sees a few dollar signs there. I don't know. I'd like to not think there are parents that are like that, but I think it's pretty obvious there are parents like that. And so they get pushed in a certain direction based off of the carrot down there.
Andre Agassi flat out said he hated tennis. He admitted it. He admits that he hated tennis, and yet he played it from age 4, was one of the greatest American tennis players, hated it, got everything in his life, and he rubbed like Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal and Novak the wrong way. And he said, how do you hate something that brought you everything? But he was like, it wasn't my passion. I did it because I had to, and that's how I could win, and I wanted to compete. But I didn't like it at all. I hated it. So, I mean, what a brain fuck that would be too, man.
Yeah. I mean, we've all got choices to make as parents, pushing kids one way or the other. And then when you're old enough to make your own decisions, you have these. You have these moments and forks in the road. It's, do I take the job that's 9 to 5, but it pays $200,000 a year? Like, that's the job that I'm able to get for some reason. It's a high paying job, but I hate that. It's boring, or it's an evil empire, and I'm just clocking in for the money. But these are the decisions. You have to
very real decisions, real decisions.
And so the thing that I think I'm always saving, that little nest egg towards the side, is I'm trying to, we call it for a rainy day, but for me it's like, I want there to be enough there that if any of my kids have a passion with no carrot at the end, that there just isn't. It's just like bowling. It's very difficult to make a lot of money out of it right now.
Sure.
And it could be anything. It could be anything else, that there's going to be a little something there that, hey, let's go chase it. Like, who cares about the carrot, right? Like, let's not worry about the carrot. Let's not worry about how you're going to pay the bills. Like, I'm going to work really hard now with the idea of, I've got 4 kids that I have to evenly and equally all help. So I save a lot of my money, but I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I was very fortunate that I had a family background that, especially in my early teens, once I started winning money bowling, it was a bit different. Mum and dad pretty much gave me that responsibility from an early teenager. It's like 15, 16, the credit card was gone. I couldn't book my flights anymore on their credit card because I was making money. So until they start,
that's a school of hard knocks too, and that's literally life's lessons. That's something that people should learn.
I say to Dad every time. So Dad fired me from the bowl. It's a funny story. It's a very funny story. But in my early teens, Mum and Dad's credit card, like 13, 14, Mum and Dad's credit card went on for everything bowling. Then 15, 16 rolled around, and I started to make a bit of money. And it wasn't a lot of money, but it was enough to pay for flights and hotels and accommodation.
When you owe zero,
and entry fees.
Good.
Yeah. And so, Dad said to me, listen, like, you make money. So respect that money. do what you want with it, but the next tournament that rolls around, you better have enough in your account to pay for your next allotted expenses. Otherwise, you gotta figure out another way to do that. And I was immature and didn't spend it right, and I had to go to work. So Dad gave me a job. He said, all right, well, now you can earn your money and you can work for me. Okay, great. So Dad would pay me, and I would do the shifts, and I would travel on certain weekends, and everything was great. Dad looked after me, paid me well for my job, even though I probably got overpaid for what I was doing. But he was, in his own way, was looking out for his kid. And one day I get called into the office, and he never closed the office door, like never. And the door gets closed, and I'm like, shit. Yo, what is going on? Like, I actually thought he was telling me he was dying or something. Like, I was not expecting what was about to happen. And so he says to me, you travel every weekend now, nearly every weekend, which means because we live in a small country town, like you've got to leave the day before, because that's the Friday. So you need to get down to where you're traveling to. And then, sometimes you finish these tournaments and you get home really late on the Sunday. And so like you just don't come into work on Monday morning. You come in the afternoon. And when you're not here, I've got to do your shifts, or I got to call your mother and she's got to fill your shifts. But we keep paying you. You're paid for these shifts. But what I'm trying to say to you is this isn't working, and we love you, but we're going to have to let you go.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
What a great lesson. Oh,
yeah.
my God.
And so I looked at him, I was like, is this for real? Like, are you really firing me? And he's like, yeah.
Have you ever told this story before, though? Like I'm sure.
Yeah, a couple of times. Yeah, a couple of times.
All right,
and so he said to me, he goes, listen, you can work here and I'll pay you very well, but you've got to be here every shift. Every shift, you're committed to this job. This is what you got to do. And if you can't commit to me, then you can't work here. And so that time when he fired me, now my Monday through the weekends, because I was working a lot, now I had it available. And so I used that to practice. So I'd come in, I would spend nearly as much time as I was working, but now I had no responsibility other than to throw spare balls for 6 hours a day, just throwing spare balls at the corners all day, every day, all day, every day, all day, every day, and then work on something else. And so you start to get pretty good when you've got that little extra time. And again, that's a luxury that not many bowlers have had. Not many people can say, I can just go to any bowling center and turn on a lane and I'm good. Like, no, you have to pay for that, and that's expensive. So I understand some of these little winks of luck that I've had because my family decided to build a bowling center have been beneficial to me. Hugo has that same opportunity. He just doesn't have it as much of an opportunity.
Was it luck, or was it something you took advantage of and honed in a skill? I mean, like, because luck would mean like it fell in your lap. I get like they owned it. You have no choice about who your parents are, but you could have said bowling is so stupid and been done with it. That's what I mean. So there was a thing about, like you said, it's the passion. So, I'd say, yeah, there's some luck, but man, nobody shoots spares for 6-8 hours a trip either, which again, you had the opportunity to, but somebody would have got bored after maybe an hour, I feel like. So
yeah, I'll be honest with you, right? When you live in Australia, like it is a long way everywhere.
From anywhere.
Yeah. Right. So like Asia is our closest friends. They're our closest friends. It's 7 hours in a plane to
I used to play Risk. You remember that board game where you try to take over that's how I learned the continents and all that.
Yeah. And so like Singapore is 7 hours away, which is the closest. That's our closest bowling neighbor, really. Them in Malaysia. And then when we go to Japan, the Americans are like, oh, you must really love that we're in Japan or Korea this week. Like, oh, I must have just no, it's 11 hours for me to still get like it's 12 and a half for you. It's still 11 hours for me to get there. Like it's a long way. And so when you start traveling around the world and you're not good at something, like you get back on the plane and come home, it's a long travel day. Like there are trips that I remember coming home from Europe, and you're talking including all of your layovers and multiple airports and countries, like you're talking 40-hour travel days, like minimum. And if you get stuck somewhere, it can clock over to 50 hours, no problem. That's just to get home, right? And so You get home after that kind of a trip and you had a poor trip, the very first thing you do is, the first thing that I did is that's unacceptable. I cannot travel like that, put myself through that, spend all of that money and miss every 10 pin that stands, or, throw another bucket shot and whiff them all. Like, what am I doing? Like, I got to get really good at all of these things because it's costing me too much and I'm too much of a competitor to accept that was okay. So yeah, when you step in, the people who find it boring after an hour, you don't know their names, dude. You don't know who they are. In any game, you think Kobe stopped after an hour of no, you know Kobe's name because Kobe spent the extra 6 hours shooting the free throws when everyone else was.
Larry Bird was notorious for that too.
That's right.
Listen, and this is something that I'm going to die on my grave. It's going to be written on my grave. Like, it's cliche. You get out what you put in. It is not cliche for a reason. Okay, it is true. Period. Yep. You got a kid that wants to be the best at something, and then you watch it. I mean, you really watch them, and you see, but they don't do it. Like, they don't really get after it. Like, they would rather spend more time doing something else, or whatever their decision is. Like I said, is what it is. It is what it is. But the ones that say you've got to pull me kicking and screaming away from this place, those are the ones that have that extra drive, that extra passion and personal motivation, that they're a hard person to beat. They are a hard person. And maybe your dad knew some of these guys growing up. They were just hustlers and fighters. They were the ones who, man, it didn't matter if it was the first ball, the last ball, the tournament. You could see them grit their teeth, and if it was for 120 or 270, they gave everything they had for that shot. And that's something that I swear by I'm going to be like to the day that I die. I don't care if I'm mathematically out of the tournament. I don't care if I'm shooting 120 in the final frame. Like, I'm going to give you everything I can possibly give for this frame. I'm going to take the 1 out of the 710 every single time. I'm going to do it because that's just who I am. And that's in my experience, the ones who have it, those are the ones that you remember or be remembered or achieve what they're looking to achieve. And if you don't have it, you can teach yourself it. You can motivate yourself and become that. But if you're not willing to spend that extra bit of chunk of change when, I could go home a little earlier and catch the movie, or do I stay here? Yeah, stay here. I mean, I don't know, man. I missed a lot of high school parties and I missed a lot of shit too because I had somewhere else to be. Yeah. I had the lanes. And
that's the difference.
Some will say to me, there were so many things you missed out on. And that's a different perspective of what I'm missing out on as a family man, because those are things I'm not choosing to do out of, it's not the same thing. It's going to a party and missing your kid's birthday party is a different scalable sacrifice. And so for me, missing those parties made a lot more sense. I don't regret that. Like, there are many things I regret leaving home for that I wish I was home for through the good and the bad times when I travel now. But back then, there wasn't one party that I'm like, man, I really should have gone to that one. Like, no one remembers them.
Even like a wet T-shirt contest party or something like that, where
hey, Dr. Ocho, I'm going to tell you right now, okay? And I presume
because it's hot in Australia, so they got to be shooting water at each other, right?
I'm going to be honest with you, okay? and this is about as real as I can possibly get. But when it comes to that type of stuff, there are so many ways in your life, through your life, to be able to see those things if you really want to see them. If that's what is in your world, and I'm not saying you personally, I'm just throwing it out.
Oh, no, you're right. No, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
Spot on.
On the kettle, yes.
So for me, going to a wet T-shirt competition in high school, yeah, sure, the boys might have thought it was the greatest night of their lives, but for me, I've had the greatest night of my lives outside of a high school wet T-shirt competition. And so I think the key to that is you got to be able to pull the trigger on things that maybe you don't realize they don't mean a lot in the long term. Like those moments that I missed out on as a teenager, the sleepover
Are you even
parties.
aware of any though? Like, probably none. Right? It was an example. That's all.
What happens when you get to reunions? So I'm still mates with a few high school buddies, and there will be times when
hey, what do you do?
well, we'll reminisce about the school days, right? And because we're all mates, and some of them still live in town where I live. It doesn't happen very often nowadays because we're a little older. We're more about what we've got going on today. But occasionally we'll say, oh, I bumped into so-and-so from back in school. And then someone will say, oh, my God, do you remember that night where we went to Jono's house and, bloody Steve jumped off the roof and busted his ankle? Do you remember that? And I'll be like, nah, man, I didn't go to that one. And there'll be moments like that where they'll have a good old laugh about it and they'll reminisce. But I don't leave those conversations, go home to my wife and say, I wish I could go back in time and I want to see Steve jump off the roof and hurt his ankle. That would have been such an amazing night. That would have been so amazing. No, I'd rather, not do that. But anyway, listen, I said 1:15 the hour.
We overtook your sleep time, man. You should be asleep, damn it. Let's go.
Real quick. How cool is Bluey as a parent?
Oh, yeah, Bluey's the best. Bluey is great. So seriously, we had the phases, right? Like Peppa Pig was when Aria, so she's 14. So when she was a baby, Peppa was the in thing. And I said from the start, I hate that little pig. That little pig is the worst little pig in the world. She's rude. She's mean. Yep. She bullies people. And then, maybe at the end of the episode, she has this brief awakening that she's this horrible little pig. And she goes on an apologetic spree, apologizing to everyone. But then you know what? The next day, she starts it all over again with someone else. She's a little miserable little thing.
Confession and then starts it over again.
22 minutes.
The vicious cycle.
Miserable to everyone, and then the last 3 minutes, she's supposed to have this enlightening moment where she's like, "Oh, right? You know what, Mummy? You're right. I shouldn't talk to George like that, should I?" And then you're like, "Yeah, you say it every week, every day, Peppa." Now, Bluey's not like that. No. Like Bluey has moments where she's acting inappropriately, and then the dad or the mum or someone will pull her into line. But then you won't see that from Bluey for 2 months, and then 2 months later, there'll be another moment where Bluey, is acting out of whack. So I love it. Bluey's great. She's a great show.
Johnny's watching Miss Rachel right now too, so that's the other thing. He doesn't have any kids, and he's watching Miss Rachel.
Bluey is a love story for parents. More parents love Bluey usually more than the kids do because it's
so many times the dad. I love the dad. I love him, and so.
Well, you should. You're the voice of him, so I mean.
right, yeah. Don't tell that was a secret. You shouldn't have told everyone that secret. But he'll say something, and I'll just look at Kimberly, and I'll just start laughing, and I'm like, that is so on the money. That comment right there is so on the money. It is funny.
I'm jealous that I can't be Bandit because he's the coolest dad ever.
You know what? I two-handed bowling was in The Simpsons a little while ago.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna say that it looked like me, but it looked a lot like me bowling.
Right.
And everyone said to me, that's pretty cool, right? And I said, you know what? That was a pretty wild moment to see The Simpsons do an episode with a two-handed bowler. But you know what? If Bluey ever ran an episode about bowling and there was two-handed bowling in it, or even better, if I was a guest and my voice was an actual proper guest on the show, that would be the ultimate highlight because it is a top-notch show.
So the Wiggles we don't want, right? You wouldn't do anything with the Wiggles.
The problem with the Wiggles is the Wiggles, the OG Wiggles, they're done.
Yeah,
I think there's one of them.
They got the one guy
survived.
with the crack on his tooth. It looks like it's like a she's trying to go gangster.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm all for this new version. The kids growing up, that's cool. But to me, the Wiggles will always be, the Wake Up Jeff songs and Big Red Cars, like the classics, the OGs.
The classics, right?
Yeah, and so now you've got these new kids on the block that are I don't know, some of the songs, I don't know, I kind of find myself head nod, like they've got a beat to them, and I'm like, that's not the Wiggles I remember.
No, that's not them. That's like a
Definitely.
little too good.
Yeah, the Wiggles were trash, but they were great because they were
potato
trash,
or some dumb shit like that.
Well, Jason.
So what's on your, is that on your Spotify?
Cat and what's the one? What is it? Ladybug and Cat Noir is another one we went through. So if you haven't seen it, it's about a boy and a girl in Paris. They're French, and they have these special little amulets that give them powers when the city turns to shit. And it turns to shit every episode, right? Every episode. Like, if you lived in Paris at this time, whenever this was actually set, dude, you'd get the hell out of that city, because every day there is a ginormous alien of some kind that's destroying.
It's like Walking Dead for kids or something.
Yeah, and so this is the thing that I always found like awkward about the show, and I was trying to always like explain to the kids like what's going on, is when they are at school, because they know each other at school, right? When they're there at school, the girl loves the boy, and when they turn into their superpower alternatives, they don't know who they are. They don't know each other. They don't know that they are Ladybug and Cat Noir. They don't know that. And so Ladybug, as a real person, loves Cat Noir. But when they're their superpowers, Cat Noir loves Ladybug, and she doesn't love him back. So there's these two dynamics of like, she really likes him as a regular boy, he really likes her as like a super. Anyway, I'm really talking.
Only on Straight Up 5, do we?
But listen, my point I'm trying to make is Pepper is awesome. Pepper is terrible, and Bluey is awesome.
That's right.
Right? Pepper is horrible, and Bluey is awesome.
You could tell his eyes.
We hate Pepper.
Good night.
The pig should get freaking grilled.
I love seeing you fire up when it gets to kid stuff. Like that's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm more passionate about Bluey and Pepper than I am about
obviously
what format we're using at the US Open.
Well, thank you, Jace, for coming on, dude.
Thank you.
2.5 hours is way too much to talk to you. No,
It was
just
a good
kidding.
hour.
It was
way too much. Oh, my bad, boys.
I'm pretty sure I speak for everybody, especially in the chat, if you haven't seen all the comments. But you've already done this for so many people, but sitting down and being as real as I know you are for everybody, as you always are, it's what an absolute pleasure this was.
Yes.
A lot of fantastic information, a lot of real deep shit. I know for a fact that a lot of people in this chat are going to be in the lanes tomorrow trying to implement a lot of things that they learned from you tonight. And I just want to personally, on behalf of the entire show and all of our fans here, Jason, thank you so much, dude.
Appreciate you, boys. Thanks for everyone watching for as long as you did, even if it was for a few minutes. Appreciate you all. Good night, and see you all whenever I see you.
All right, buddy.
Rob, you got anything to close with?
I'm good. Thank you, Jason. We really appreciate it.
Solid. Cheers, Jace.
Bye.
Oh, and kick some ass at the U.S. Open.
That's the plan. See you.
All right.
See ya. Wow.
What the fuck just happened? Like, what the fuck just happened?
Now tell me Sean Rash would do that.
Oh, don't.
Oh. Hey, I mean, he's
we are.
Oh, good. I meant it.
He's not.
I thought you're friends with the guy.
I am.
Oh, sorry. Sean's next.
What I mean by that comment is just like we said a million times, is the realness.
Yeah.
That was so good.
That's all.
Troy, thank you for being here.
Troy, yes, Troy. We love you, Troy.
Hours of complete dedication after you've done what you've done in this sport, taking time to legit and not just like say shit just to say shit. Jason had no problem speaking his mind about exactly how he felt.
Super insightful. Everything. Holy shit. Things we've never heard about.
No problem having a rebuttal for shit that we've spoken about or anything along those lines. He was just a true gentleman, as he always is. There's something that separates world-class professionals in every single sport. You know, we were talking about how the pros are just, they live for it. Like, Jason didn't go to the parties because he wanted to continue to bowl. Like, he's not missing out on anything because he's doing what he loves. And honestly, with all due respect, I mean, that's true. Arnold Palmer would go to the driving range after shooting 62 in the third round and having a 4-shot lead. And they'd say, what are you doing hitting golf balls? They say, when I'm hitting this good, why on earth would I want to stop?
Yep.
That's a different mentality than most people. Like, when I get done typically bowling league and I shot 800, I'm like, shit, now I want to go sit in the bar, have drinks,
celebrate,
karaoke. Like, Today, no. They go home and they say, I did my job today. I got to go back and do it tomorrow.
Hope I can repeat it because
it's such a fabulous mentality. And like, obviously, like we were trying to joke around, Rob, with our outfits tonight, but in the same respect, we put these on specifically to show class to a classy professional and the professional in the sport that, as he said earlier, we all love. This was just really...
this was a trip, man.
This was special, as special, I believe, for the entire crew here at Straight Up 5 as it was for everybody.
I think for bowling, really, honestly. Like, we had the guy on here telling his side of the story, man, telling us what goes on and what it takes. And
I feel bad. I feel bad for shitting on Fox and Rob Stone and the rest. Like, the amount of information that he gave us.
If you don't bring up your qualms about something, how are you ever going to find the information that's
It's a good point.
Like, I would have never in a million years thought about the sponsorships and the advertisements and the fact that, well, you added 30 minutes to the show, but you deleted all this shit that I want. Like, I never, ever would have looked at it that way.
Yeah.
It was very, 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 very insightful and like really kept me glued the entire time.
Thank you, Belmo, and thank you, Ocho's biceps.
And
as per usual.
And that's no slight to anybody else we've ever had on, but like,
no, right, that's true.
It shows how much of an ambassador he is for the sport that he's willing to give out that kind of information that nobody else has. I'm sure they all know it, but no one's going to go out there and go on a limb and say it.
Yeah, that's true. I don't mean that. But I mean, it's anybody who does watch the show and who's been on the show is going to go, well, shit, it was Belmo.
But he doesn't just go to.
We treat everybody the same.
Right. But bowling is his job, and he could just do his job and go home, but he actually is in the production meetings. He's in with the ball reps. He's in with
to improve it, to make
with
it
Fox
better,
Sports. Like,
forward.
Of course, he could just go home and just do whatever he wants. But the fact that he knows all of this information about the inner workings of the sport and the presentation means, of course, he's the fucking greatest, right? He's not just the greatest on the lanes. He's the greatest because he commits his entire life away from home to everything that makes the product good, whether it's the lanes.
He did commentary for a year and was freaking spot on at it. Like, I don't think he does comedy. He just showed up. He's like, hey, by the way, I'll try this. And he was fucking awesome.
He's all in, like Chuck just said. Yeah, he's all in on it.
True.
But, Johnny, thanks for making this happen, brother.
You're the one that started this, Rob, and honestly...
I started it.
It was...
Well, I could tell the story. I mentioned last week, for the 100th episode, I bought a cameo for Jason to congratulate us for 100 episodes, and he didn't want to take our money.
Because of me.
He said, he messaged Johnny and said, you guys sent me a cameo request. I'll make you a video for free. I don't want your money. And then he made the joke about coming on the show, which I thought was a joke, but he legit wanted to be on our show because he watched it and liked it. That blows my mind. Like,
the fact that he could... And I know he watches it now because he picked out something from a show from
months and months, a year ago.
Something about that. That was 6 months ago.
Way if you haven't watched this show that you would just pick that out of.
No, that was like a year ago. Yeah,
it might have been even a year.
That was good.
Yeah. So,
but and that's Jeff Skyer's comment. Yes, I couldn't say when he told us recommended us go watch the channel. I'm like, I would watch the Brad and Kyle channel a lot more if it was the Kyle channel.
Oh, that's.
Come on.
I'm sure he's a nice guy.
But I mean,
Madison needed Felix Unger. Come
again, though, he does his due diligence.
Brad also starred in Your Highness.
But he also knows about Nate. Hey, he also knows about Nate and Elise in a lot of the YouTube channels.
From the league.
He's a fan of all bowling. Like, he knew Nate and Elise's channel. He knew all the different channels. Like, he doesn't have to fucking do that.
You don't just wake up one day and not be all in. You know what I mean? He's all in. That's it. Hey, look, I hate to say this, but I
love the talks, though, by the way.
About an hour hike home, and poor Evelyn is sitting at mom and dad's. So.
And she's still not hitting the cutoff, man.
Yeah, it's just something I'd like her to work on.
Well, like you said, Belmo said, you got to practice, dude. Kobe shooting free throws for 8 hours. Get Evelyn out there when it's warm. Don't want to do it in the cold, obviously. When it's warm, just get her out there and practice. That's all you got to do.
Hell yeah.
Hey, Dan Young, thank you for being not a douchebag tonight.
Thanks to everybody for being here. We were strong all night as we anticipated we would be.
Yeah.
But again, really hope you guys enjoyed tonight's show. It was what an honor. What
monumental for sure.
To talk to somebody who just gives it to you straight, that's real, and is the best player in our game today. hands down.
I just wish he would have said fuck Doc Sullivan. If we just could have gone and do
I can't
that.
believe we got him to say fuck.
He did, yeah, a few
I think he
times.
slid.
I think he giggled too.
A few times. See, Troy brought up.
We do have a sanctioned F-bomb, which is fabulous.
we
That's
do.
what's important here on Straight Up 5.
Hey, maybe he'll get us connected as the official podcast of the PBA. Who knows? We'll have to.
Oh Christ!
We'll have to work on that. But thanks, guys. I
All right,
appreciate it.
guys.
Ocho, I'm glad your sleeves are gone because you looked really uncomfortable without them.
They left like within 5 minutes, as we know.
I'm going to remove my clip-on bow tie now.
Next week we have Michael Hagen Jr. Hagen.
Chris, you fucking butchered it.
I don't know how to fucking say his name. I'm
Tonight
sorry.
we had
Tournament of Champions winner
Jason Belmonte, and next week it's going to be
the pride of Carefree, Arizona.
He'll be
How
on.
would you like to live in a place called Carefree?
Yeah, no
I
shit.
chew their gum all the time.
Like
So
Well, Ocho lives in Ochoville, so what are the odds of that?
All right, can we go? It's been 2 hours.
Jesus Christ, Rob, shut up in the show, you
We gotta
fucking
go.
mutt.
With that note, it's time to go. Unfortunately, they're closed now. I can't fucking go. I'm starving, but
You got, of course, it's at
There's
the,
something about an hour ago.
it's at the fucking porch.
I love you guys. Everybody, thanks for watching tonight. We had over 130 people in here at one time, which is like 17 times the normal limit we have in here. So thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next week with Michael Hagen Jr. And
Haugen,
you asshole.
Fucking asshole. All right, we love you guys. Thanks again to all of our viewers. You guys are the best.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Straight Up 5 with Johnny Petraglia Jr. You can follow the show on Twitter at Straight Up 5 Pod. Follow Johnny Jr. at JPJR07. Follow Rad Rob at Rad Rob Gaming. And follow Dr. Ocho at the Dr. Ocho. Got a question for Johnny? Send your questions to straightup5podcast@gmail.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Straight Up 5 with Johnny Petraglia Jr. Right here on the Rad Rob Radio Network.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.